President Barack Obama is a source of pride within the black community. Even long after his presidency, black Americans look at his time in office with reverence. However, what did Obama actually accomplish for the community? Does he deserve the endless praise he receives? Is it wrong to be critical of him, as that might give ammunition to bad actors? And overall, did the Obama presidency hurt the black community? All right. This has been something I wanted to ask for a while. Uh, and I'm really interested as to where this might go. So we'll start with our good friend Fanatic.
So I would say that I don't think I would ever be able to make the statement that he hurt the black community per se. But what I would say is there were plenty of benefits, most of which were not political. For one, I would say none of us, I think all of us are too old to understand what it felt like to be a super young person and have your worldview shaped by seeing the first president of the United States be a black man. And I know even when it came to my grandmother, how important it was just to see him there, just to see him as a president. I don't know if she was like particularly politically activated, such that she understood everything that was going to happen or what that meant for the country politically, but just the imagery I think was particularly important. I think he also carried himself with a lot of dignity, him and his wife. So I think both of those things were again very, very beneficial, very, very beautiful. So I'm very appreciative of that. Politically, I don't think he did anything specifically for ADOS people at all. So no, I don't think he was particularly harmful. I think overall, like just the dignity that he carried and being that face, the image of it was important.
Okay. This will be fertile ground. All right. Let's go with Gilly. If you could,
So,
yeah, there you go. All right.
sorry. So when Obama first came into like presidency, I was still in high school and I wasn't politically aware. So like when he first came in, I didn't really understand the impact that he had. But I agree with everything that like Fanatic was saying. He it's good to have representation, and having someone be a black president, that's like amazing for the youth. That is amazing for the community. Just that in itself. Did Obama do anything crazy to really help out his community? I don't see that. Is the community doing way better than it was before Obama? I don't really see that. Um, but he did do a lot of good things. So that is my opinion on that.
Okay. All right. Next, GSU Gambit.
Yeah, so much of like what's been said, what this did, at least for me, socially was amazing. So I grew up in a community that was like 99% black, and the only interactions that I had with white people were not the best, I'll say. Um, and so it kind of shaped my worldview when a lot of people told me, hey, white people just don't like black people, all of them almost. And when I first got to college and Obama becomes president, I'm like, wait, it can't be true that all white people don't like black people because this nigga just got elected and we only like 13% of the populace. So it let me know that we do have allies that are white, and it kind of sort of became the backdrop for a lot of my interactions, interracial interactions, from thenceforth. But yeah, so I voted for Obama completely because he was black. There was no other reason. I was not politically aware at all. So it was just for the social progress. But I will say, I mean, there's a lot of things we can point to that happened under his presidency. Why exactly these things happen? It's hard to say. Is it specifically because naturally there's progression, such as like the unemployment rate drastically dropping? I think like teenage pregnancy drastically dropped under him for a couple of years. There's like two or three other like social or economic identifiers that radically changed under him, and some of those things have continued since he's left office. So it's hard to say, is it just continued progress, or is it something specifically that he did to encourage people, or legislation that changed it? But I'm pretty sure we'll get into that in the open. But yeah, I generally think he was a net good for Black people. Absolutely, I don't think there's an argument that could be made that he's not a beneficial person for Black people.
Okay. Law Playbook. Or do you want like your whole name, like Law Playbook, or just Law? Or...
I could just go by law if it makes it easier.
Okay.
As for Barack Obama's presidency, he became president when I was in late elementary school, but I saw all of the social impact it had. So socially, I believe it was very great for progress of Black Americans as far as being able to see someone in such a high, powerful place being able to become president, being able to reach that mountaintop. And he's like, okay, well, that's possible for me. As being like super young, I was like, okay, I could go out and run for office. I could do that sort of thing. But as I got older and older, and started to like look at it with a microscope, I still think overall it was a very social good, but there were also some side aspects that came with his presidency, such as like one of the most general things, as like people saying, "Oh, this Barack Obama becoming president is the end of racism," sort of thing. As oh well, America can't be racist because we voted a Black man into the presidential seat. Things like that came along with his presidency on the social aspect, and just he's not perfect. He's definitely not perfect. Was he good? I would say he was positive. Socially, great for inspiring young Black youths, but overall, it's a very mixed bag in my opinion. But we'll get into it as we get further down.
Late elementary school. Fanatic, we got some kids in here. Oh man. I know you had the same thought. All right. But no, thank you so much, Law. All right. Next, Top Dolphin.
Yeah. So when in 2007, when Obama was elected, it was the first like political campaign that I was like really remember or was engaged in terms of like presidency. Like the other presidents, I knew they existed, but I never like. It's the first presidential process I remember going through, and for me as a small child, it was super impactful to see this well-spoken like African American man like win the presidential election. And when I say well-spoken, I don't mean like the like, oh, that Black guy can like speak full sentences like a lot of white people use it. I mean, that man's like rhetoric and his like speaking ability will probably be studied for generations, how effective he was. And I think he's done like a lot of good. He was like a really good role model or like a really good like representation of Black people when in a time when like that was probably the beginning of when Black people started to be represented in different ways in the media and other than just tropes. And I think politically he did a lot of really good things. The ACA probably helped a lot of Black people, even if it wasn't perfect. And there's like a lot of other programs he implemented that helped Black people, as well as some that might have hurt. I think to say that like Obama did nothing but bad things for African Americans is like crazy. Like a lot of people like to demonize him to be. He was pretty effective, and he not effective, but he was like pretty good overall.
Next, Bowler's World.
So my opinion on this, okay, it's kind of, I don't want to say conflicting, but I think whenever we judge the quality of a president, I'm gonna agree with Fanatic 100%. I don't think the Black community like came out worse out of the presidency, but there wasn't like a lot of legislation that specifically like addressed maybe Black issues. I just want to focus on that part for now. I generally enjoyed the Obama presidency. Gambit was right. Oh no, the point that Gambit brought up about the economic recovery. I think the stimulus like bill that was passed during the Obama administration has been credited for a lot of like the positive economic effects. Just with the critique that I think it was a little too slow. I think that's a big benefit. The healthcare bit, the ACA was a pretty big deal. I think if you want to look at like maybe a potential success for the Black community would be the consent decrees, the federal consent decrees. But even then, you could argue that some people may argue that that's not enough. It did seem to be somewhat effective in the areas that it was put into place, so like New Orleans and such as. And the consent decree, to give some context, was I think a relationship that was put in between the federal government and like individual police districts to make sure that those police districts would help be reformed. And it seemed to be pretty effective in the cities it was put in, with New Orleans being like that prime top tier city. I also agree with Top Dolphin on this one though. The having like I Obama is like when I think of like my presidency. Sorry, no. When I think of myself as a kid, the president that I always think of is Obama, right? Like, and it wasn't because he was actually president, but because like, wow, this black guy's president. This guy was also African, of African descent. He speaks really well, and I remember the nicest compliment that I would always get as a kid was, like you kind of look like Obama. Your ears kind of look like Obama, okay? People are trying to say that like I had big ears or something, but to me, I thought that was cute because I thought he was a great role model to have. So like I think that like cultural effect is very strong, and I don't think that'll ever be forgotten.
Okay. Two things. One, someone one time compared me to Will Smith. I was literally just because I was the only black guy in the room. That's exactly what. That's the only. And then that was a black celebrity that they could name, and so that was Will Smith. Is what I was. Amazing. Puller, because I was a bit distracted. Good for Gabby. Thank you so much for sending your hot tier 1 gifts up. Thank you so much. You said the ACA, right? And you were like kinda.
Yep.
And then you said the consent decrees. And was there a third thing that I might have missed?
I think I was talking about the economic stimulus. Those are like I think those are some of the bigger things
Okay.
because like I think from the data that I've seen, black people are hit probably the hardest from like the recession, as well as like even wealth hasn't really like reaccumulated to the point that it was present at that point. Disproportionately have like access to healthcare, and I think the consent decrees when it comes to police police brutality was a big deal as well. And I mean, there's some small things to deal with that, but yeah.
Okay. Thanks so much. Next we have Pyro Tyrant, who is just joining us. Happy to have him. Pyro Tyrant, you can introduce yourself and then jump to the topic.
Okay, yeah, I'm the Pyro Tyrant. You all know me. I'm on Prime's panels like all the time. I do streaming myself on my own channel, so like if you want to subscribe, do that shit. I'm just happy to be here, my day off. I'm gonna be engaging in this topic, and I'm glad to see so many familiar faces and some new ones that I'm happy to hear about. When it comes to this topic about like whether Obama deserves the praise or not if he helped the black community, and I usually look at these in two separate lights, right? I like to look at his actions as president, and he did do a few things that helped the minority community. But when it comes to like, should he be praised and whatnot because he was the first? I personally don't think so. I live in a city where our mayor was the first black mayor, ever, and he's been in charge this entire time, and he was complete dog shit by his actions. It has nothing to do with his race. Like, when it comes to things like this, I like to look at it about it for my role models, like what did they do specifically? Like Obama did do some better things than my fucking mayor Byron Brown, but when it comes to those things, like we gotta like break those down individually to see whether or not like they were actually targeted towards our communities or were they just like broad things put in place to help the nation overall.
Okay. I have thoughts on this, but I'm going to save them for a little later. I'm curious if you all will take it, and then I'll let the yelling begin. All right, with fanatics specifically. But anyway, so go ahead, everyone. Open to the panel.
I think what Tyrant was saying on how like you look at the president for what they did for the community. I think one of the biggest and most amazing things he did for the community was become the president. That is like the biggest accomplishment, to be honest. He like completely broke the mold. He like defied everybody's expectations, and I think it was an amazing thing for the community just within itself.
It was an amazing thing for the community within itself, but after that moment, what else did he do? So, like, where I could look at the first black president, I could be like, damn, we had the first one and he was a real good one, right? Like, I brought up the example of my mayor, Byron Brown, and like, for the first few terms, people felt that way, but then the dude started being corrupt as shit. Then the dude started doing all the typical shit, and now it's like, no one likes this dude. No one gives a fuck that he was the first black whatever in the city. Like, he's a bad mayor. So like when I'm talking about like how we look at Obama in the same light, like it's great. It's 100% great for the community that we did overcome this barrier and shit. And that's something that like should be talked about and whatnot. But when we're talking about the person who holds the position themselves, what exactly did they do to make the nation better? What exactly did they do to actually
Well,
influence the
to
communities
make
that
the
they're coming
nation
from?
better, he pulled us out of a recession, right? If you
Yeah,
go
no,
and
and that's
speak,
one of the things we can give to him, right? Like he did help the nation come out of that recession and some stuff like that. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say Obama bad, but like when I'm talking about like should he get the praise just for being the first black president? Like there is something that comes with that, but then I want to pay attention more to what they did. Like you're the first, what you do actually holds a little bit more of a matter, especially when it comes to something like this, because people will be like, well, you did get the one and look how he turned out, right? Like
well, I think all of us here understand how deeply rooted either systemic oppression and or implicit biases are in this country. So the idea that he was gonna make just astronomically large strides outside of the social progression, I don't think I believed that even when I was first happy that he made it to be president. I think that even if we look at the Congress today with Joe Biden, where they own the House and the Senate, right? There's not landmark legislation being passed for Black people, and I didn't have that bar for him when he took office. Like, of course, it's something that I think we all innately wanted because he was the first Black president. But I think it was unreasonable to assume that all of the barriers that we know exist he was going to tear most of those down. Or I mean, it sounds like I'm giving them like low expectations, but it's just with our country, I didn't feel like he overcame the barrier just becoming president. Going further than that, I would have loved it, but I didn't necessarily believe that was possible.
I actually agree with Gambit. This comes like it's very hard, at least in like in a democratic sense or with like the existence of political capital, to okay, so like the whole goal of like a politician is to get reelected. So you probably want to have bills or do things that makes you as appealable to as many people as possible. There's like a reason why like there's like a reason why some people will feel left out when certain bills are being passed through that don't necessarily apply to them, which I think it sucks. But sometimes it seems like if you only have the ability to pass X amount of bills through, that like you probably want to prioritize as many bills that apply to as many people as possible and end up getting you reelected. Now, that's not to say that like there are some actions that don't require very much like as much political capital, and that may be like actions done by just the executive branch, so departments of the federal government that end up dealing with these things. And that's why like positively like the consent decrees are a good thing because from my understanding didn't really require as much interaction with the legislative branch of the government. And those are the things that like I think you can end up criticizing a president for on their activities. Well, did they try pushing this when they didn't really have the obstacles needed? And I think that's a much better like that's a much better I would say that's a much better way to find out intent rather than anything else. Yeah, and like even now, like Gambit brings up the point of like talking about like, oh, we don't really expect that many landmark things to happen, and it's like in reality, I think some people expect a lot out of a legislative branch and a government, and sometimes things don't go as fast as we expect them to, for probably for good reason too.
I'm
Yeah, we
also
have like a really slow moving system here. I kind of agree with you too on that point that like becoming president was like a really big thing. At the same time, I kind of like empathize and like agree with Tyrant that it's like really good to have like specific policies that were passed that you can look to, whether they were small or large, when you like evaluate a president. Because like at the end of the day, like if you don't like pass policy, um, like and especially if you don't pass policy that like benefits the African American community, I don't know if you can necessarily. Well, you may have been a decent president to have been African American. I don't think you can necessarily say that you were a president for the African American people in the same way as you could if you were someone who passed policy directly affecting African American communities.
That's tough. I don't know if we like that kind
Or
of gets.
like we can even say like attempted to pass policy. So like you can also look at like policy somebody proposed. Um, necessarily, like, or like, and like it's really difficult because you have to look at like the political viability of stuff as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But like if like having the opportunity or like to like actually have actions and push policies that would affect like African American community is probably still important, because if forever like we only expect like African American presidents to simply just cater to white people because they're the majority and never help the black community, well then I guess no president is ever for the African American community. Like some president at some point is gonna have to take risks. Even if it's like doesn't get them reelected, which I mean Obama didn't have to worry about, especially like in his like second term where like you can't run for 3 terms. So like you should like you're not trying to get reelected at that point. I guess maybe if you're running for like a lower
He had a
position
Republican
afterwards, but that
Congress at
generally
that
doesn't
point.
happen.
He had a Republican Congress at that point too, right?
Yeah, during his second term, he did. I believe. I was looking at this earlier. I believe the first 2 years of his second term, he had a Democratic Senate and a Republican House, and then the last 2 years was completely Republican.
The last 6 years. Yeah, the last 6
That's
years.
actually
the last 6.
Well, the last, yeah, from the half of
The last
his first term.
four-
No, the last
four.
6, right? So
Wasn't the House still Democratic in the second 2
Wow, my
years
mic
of his
was
first
unplugged.
term?
sorry, were you gonna say something, Fanatic?
Yeah, I was trying to talk earlier. I didn't realize my mic was
Oh,
unplugged.
okay.
So yeah, I was saying regarding the consent decrees, I don't really look at that as like a huge thing by Obama. Number one, consent decrees, like specifically regarding public law enforcement, have happened for a long time. One of the earliest ones that I was ever aware of regarding like police restructuring was for Los Angeles after the LA riots that happened in '92, I want to say. And those consent decrees like didn't do anything. Like Rampart, like they eventually like got rid of the Rampart division, but that wasn't because of the consent decree. And then furthermore, like there were the same attitude towards the police officers like persisted. There were still all these ridiculous claims of like police brutality, and then it was eventually lifted. I want to say in either 2013 or 2003, one of those years ending with the 3. I know it's a decade apart, but I really wouldn't give him a lot of credit for consent decrees because they've like always been kind of shown to be like powerless, and the police reform that's still so heavily needed is still always there. Fortunately, in wake of George Floyd's murder, Chicago recently passed one of the largest police reforms ever, right? And so then that's really beneficial. But that wasn't, again, it had nothing to do with the consent decree. That just happened to do with the political climate at the time. So I was just pushing back against that. And then furthermore, one other person had made the statement that like the best thing you could do is just being elected. And I just fully disagree with that. Because I mean, I would imagine that I don't have to imagine it. There are a bunch of white folks out there that look at Ronald Reagan as like their hero, as like this stalwart hero. And then because he passed a lot of legislation and like changed the narrative of a bunch of things that were largely harmful to people of color, but largely beneficial to white people. So I would say that in reality, I think the bar should be so much higher than just did you get elected. I think that's a little crazy.
I just wanted to push kind of. I agree with Fanatic on like, yeah, consent decrees aren't something new. That's I think that the point that I was making was that like, that's one of those things that you can do on the executive branch, and I think doing that is just another action that you can do without having to like waste as much political capital. I would say at least like the city that always comes up to my mind when we think about like consent decrees is New Orleans. And in New Orleans, it seemed to be pretty effective. So like
How would you
interactions.
measure that effect?
So yeah, I'll go into that. So in 2009, before the consent decree, about 53% of interactions with the police were considered pleasant and courteous. And then a decade later, that number increased to 87%. Also, when we look at like crime rates, monitors also found a correlation between public opinion of the police and the violent crime rate. This seems to go in line with the idea that like trust in police, so whether that be like actually reporting to them and interacting with them, can help decrease crime. And for example, the 2018 homicide rate in New Orleans was 146, and it was a 47-year low. I have an article on that if you want to see that as well.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah.
Another good thing that Obama did, I believe it was Obama, right? He changed like asking for criminal background on job applications, federal job applications, right? I want to say Obama did that. I'm pretty sure he did that. I can look that up, but I'm pretty sure he did that too. So that allowed people with prior charges to be able to land federal jobs. I'm pretty sure he did that. Let me look this up. Yeah, okay, yeah, I found the article. This was 2015. Wow, this was during the second term. But yeah, so yeah, he did some things. I mean, like I said, I didn't think he was gonna solve racism like a lot of our counterparts on the right thinks he did. But yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, how you were saying like you disagree with me that him just becoming president was one of like the best things he did. Like, would you want to wait to get a black president until like he's the absolutely perfect president that will solve every single issue and absolutely like bring the the country to like the perfect spot where you want it to be? Like,
Wait,
I don't get what
you
you.
gotta.
After a while,
No,
every
hold
we
on.
community
Uh,
does like
There is an enormous amount of middle ground between those two things. Like why? Like you literally went from one extreme of literally just being elected to the complete like opposite extreme of literally the ideal perfect president. Like this is crazy. There's an enormous amount of middle ground between those two
Yeah,
things. I
but
would say so I would say setting the bar at the absolute like lowest you can possibly get it, which literally there is nothing lower than the bar that you set there, unless you can dream up one right now. I'm willing to hear it. And
I
like
mean,
I
you
would
could
say
say
that setting the
just
bar there
running
is
for president,
ridiculous.
right?
Well, I guess
the
so.
thing
Okay,
is
sure.
that
You're right.
I didn't say it as a statement. I said it as a question. So I said it as, would you want that? So
No,
then you
no,
would answer what
that
you would
question
expect.
that question is absurd because I'm pretty sure everyone here knows like only sits deal in absolutes. So I don't think it's important to wait around for literally the absolute best president that can ever possibly exist. I don't think that that's intelligent to do, but I don't think that that's even a reasonable thing to introduce into the conversation in which we're trying to determine whether or not an individual was beneficial or not. I think a more important thing to do would be to look and compare him to other presidents that have existed and other presidents who have done similar things for other people. And then, for example, if you have like a Republican president who did significant, insane things for the Republican Party, like Trump, or I think he's obviously a bizarre and extreme example. But my point being, you would compare that. You wouldn't just sit there and look and say, "Oh, he just got elected," nor would you say he's the perfect whatever. I don't think either of those things are reasonable. What I do expect is a reasonable person that's going to be representing a given people and playing on that given people's idea that he's supposed to be working for their interests to deliver on some fronts. And I didn't really see that delivery happening.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was saying like because he it's bad that he got elected. I think people were saying that like the bar ought not be I was black and got elected. While his election could have been a good thing, that doesn't mean that it was the greatest thing, like some people said.
So
that's why I brought up the example of like my city mayor, right? Like for Byron Brown, first black mayor of Buffalo. Horrible fucking mayor when you look at the individual and his policies, and literally no one likes him and like at all. So like
That's
when we
he just got
take
voted
the
out.
yeah, he just got voted out, but yeah, you would have look at like that election. This was one of the lowest turnouts for the election, and it's only the primary. He still has a chance to win in November 2nd
As
because he does have a lot of support from the upper class billionaires, and he's actually considering a write-in campaign where he will have the support of like the police department and several other organizations within the city. This is not over by a long shot.
let's go to Chris Cosmo, who joined us, came in to help fill in a spot. Thank you, Chris Cosmo, for being here. Introduce yourself for everyone, and then please give us your opinion on this.
Yeah, Chris Cosmo, mainly Twitch artist. Right now, trying to decide on some content that I want to push, some like structured content, because right now I'm streaming on random days. If you want to come catch some art stuff, I'm thinking about like doing lessons on Twitch. So if you want to come check that out, give me some ideas on it.
You can
I'll take
teach
that
me
to
how to
mind.
not suck at art.
Yeah, like, definitely, and I'll do it for
Oh,
free.
cool.
I'm doing art all day, so might as well share it with some people. And as far as my take on this, I kind of I'm where GSU and Fnatic are when it comes to Obama. Like GSU made a good point where like he got elected the first time. Like I saw it too. Like the amount of white people that voted for him, and not just like regular liberal white people, like some conservative like leaning people. Like when that happened, I'm like, this is the perfect opportunity to like build on this social progress. Like the Bush years are so bad that like a lot of these people were just like, damn, I'd rather vote for a black man than go through what I did back then when it came to some white people. So it's like there was a chance to seize on like social building from there on. But somehow it went like we went 2 steps up and 2008, 2010. And then like when I got to 2012, like shit just went off a cliff. Like things started like degrading socially like pretty fast. Like these divides in the country started getting bigger and bigger. Like in between that time, I understand like that's when like Obama was hamstringed the most. But at the same time, there were so many social events like Ferguson that happened that he didn't push nearly enough on to create social change. Like if you gotta like throw out a executive order to give people a taste of something so they like want to get out and vote for it if the Republicans try to take it away, do that. Like throw some Hail Marys out there. But like it was like they seemed so defeated for like 4 years straight that when like Trump came up, like it gave Trump a real opportunity to win. Fucking Donald Trump, like he was like nobody really thought he was gonna win that, but somehow he did, and off purely off of the social conditions we were in at the time, that did some real harm to a lot of people. Trump's like term, like it just did, and like the things we could have avoided or at least tried to build on while he was in office, like that he could have done, like especially when it came to black issues, like we probably wouldn't have been in this situation today. We're still dealing with the same stuff we were dealing with in Obama years. Like we had a black president, and we're still watching like black people get murdered on like TV, like by cops constantly, like these like mass shootings constantly. Like where, like like I don't even remember him pushing so hard on these things. I don't remember speeches dedicated entirely
He did the
to
opposite, Chris.
like
He did the opposite. He said he literally couldn't talk on it because it was still being, it was still going through the legal process. When literally that was like plenty
So
of presidents have spoken on these issues.
that's something that like I would look at when we talk about this, like whether Obama should be praised, right? Like besides color and being the first one elected, how did he go about talking about the issues that our community actually holds, right? Did he actually do that? We just brought up an issue where like Mr. Fanatic saying like he didn't, he backtracked and said it was in the legal system. Another issue I can think of is like gay marriage, right? Like Obama before Biden gaffed, he was like flip-flopping on it a little bit, and then Biden outright said like, yeah, I support gay marriage and that's something I'd like to see. And it looks really bad when the president and the vice president disagree. So he was kind of pigeonholed into that. And these are like some
No,
of the
no.
issues I want to look at.
So just to correct the record on that, you're close, Pyro. But in terms of the whole gay marriage thing, President Obama was always planning on coming out for gay marriage. That was the plan. But this happened in 2012, right? Yeah, in 2012. The plan was to do it closer to the election as like a surprise to like up support. But then Biden like gaffed and say his opinion beforehand, got ahead of the president, embarrassed the White House, and so that's when they did it. They were saving it for like a political move later on to get an advantage. So that's what happened there. It's not like he got forced into it. He got forced to do it earlier, but that was always the plan. Like I didn't like the way he did that at all. But,
Oh yeah, like
yeah.
I will. Okay, so like, thank you for correcting me, Prime. But like, I will say it, like, just to strengthen my point a little bit, I will say like, yeah, even that is kind of fucked up, right? Like holding something that monumentous and that important to like a good majority, like not a good majority, but like a good portion of the country's citizens for like a political move. Yeah,
Well,
shit like
I'll,
that is
This
what I
is
kind of.
like that's like
I'll
one
try
of
to
like the
defend
most
it.
important things about policy
Yeah,
is not only when you pass policy, but like not only how you pass and what policies you pass, but when you pass it. If you can not only like give like legal protections to like a group of people, but do it as a time that it like spurs your supporters into action and can get a lot of other things done, you absolutely hold it a couple of years. It's not like he was planning not to do it. He was planning to do it as at a time where that thing could generate more positive things than it would on its own.
yeah, and I'll add to that. So like everybody said, his first 2 years were there was a Democratic House and Senate, and I feel like his first 2 years were like largely dedicated to the economic crisis that was in the country. So I agree with Top Dolphin in that and what Prime was saying in that part of trying to support gay marriage was to try and flip the Congress during that voting election, which would have gave them majority also in the Senate, and it didn't work out. It actually was. I think somebody was even posting in the chat that it was the biggest drop like since some crazy
There
date.
was
But
1,000 seats. In 2010, there was 1,000 seats lost across the country in terms of like state houses, the governorships, and Congress. 1,000 seats wiped out.
oh, so that wasn't in 2013. That was in 2011. So yeah, so it even makes even more sense then if they had also lost that in 2011 and for the 112th Congress, that means that he also needed to get reelected at this point, because if the Senate flipped that, if the Congress flipped that much, it's possible that he doesn't get reelected. So I think these things were strategic and they didn't work out, and for the rest of his term it was going to be blocked. So for the people that are like Obama didn't make enough change. His first 2 years were dedicated to an economic crisis. In the rest of the time, they didn't have control of the House and the Senate. So it was unlikely that anything Republicans didn't want was going to pass. So, like,
That's true, but at the same time, like if that's the case, like you got to find like another solution, right? And a lot of it was just sitting on their hands, right? Just complaining that, well, I can't do anything. Well, get out in front of the people if you can't do that. Like we have to wait till Trump, like to like he started going
oh,
out and like
Even
doing
there were
parades and
bills
stuff.
proposed and filibuster, right? There were
Yeah,
things
but like that's what I mean.
proposed.
Like, what if you can't do anything politically, like at least try to build something socially. And I think he didn't like capitalize on it. Like just like instead of like doing like pivoting, like all right, this isn't going to work. What can we do for like the next Democratic president coming up? This is our last term. How can we like build on this? Like the that 2016 campaign was so lazy and was so like it was so like
It
they
was,
were so smug about like Hillary
well,
Clinton winning
they
that
fought
they
Bernie.
dropped the
So
ball on so many things. Right?
yeah, I
Yeah,
think, but
they dropped the
Chris,
ball harder. They focus like they went harder on Bernie than they did Trump. So like
but
that.
yes,
Chris, like even I would agree that like this is like this is why we see extents of like the executive power increasing, right? Like when we weren't able to get like a deal going on immigration, you have things like DACA, right? But the issue with this is that like if one president puts it in independently, through an executive order, another president can just come in and take it away. So that's a big issue. And I think even when it comes to like bully pulpit, from my understanding, bully pulpit is becoming less and less effective, especially when it comes to like when you have leaders like Mitch McConnell and like the Republicans becoming like so in line in step, that like maybe this is something, maybe this is like just like a more like a political on the ground action thing, but maybe it's just time for the Democratic Party or just Democratic voters to view appealing to your senators, your congressmen very differently. This is a big issue with the NRA. Like this is a good point here, but the NRA isn't effective because they have a lot of money. The NRA isn't that effective because they lobby a lot. It's because like NRA members are some of the most vocal. They're more likely to call their senators, their congressmen, and what this does is overrepresents an opinion in their constituents, because the voters are the ones that really make a difference in a senator and Congress and a senator and representatives like policy like proposals. So maybe that's the way we should start dealing with things rather than just going with the traditional bully pulpit.
That's true. That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. Like going with other things,
Yeah.
going down like like to the ground, getting people active, right? Like people were forced to get active this like past term. Like when it came to the Democrat side, like things were looking hopeless. Everybody just started making coalitions and just started like doing what they can for the next election. People started fighting hard for it. But like that 2016 campaign was like it was not the same. We didn't have the same amount of people on the ground that we did. Like Hillary didn't even go to like all the states she was supposed to go to. We just missed out on like just like the past few years of trying to quell what like everybody saw coming, like this surge of like far right conservatism, like all these terms that popped up like because of it, all the like all the like the things like the different types of talks of people that like come out of this era that we have terms for now.
So,
Like it's like this is directly
so,
off of Obama's like presidency.
so,
Like we
so uh, I wanted to push back on Polar just lightly
Mhm.
on your bully pulpit comment, right?
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that the bully pulpit has lost the amount of power that it has. It might have. I mean,
Yeah, because when I
in real terms,
yeah.
it might have. But I would say that we haven't had presidents, right, other than maybe Donald Trump, who actually decided to use it, right? So I mean, Obama and Biden, right? Democrats get into office, their first words out of mouth is like, "I'm excited to work with Republicans," right? The ones who've lied about us, the one who literally make up facts out of thin air, the ones who are a danger to the republic, as we like the Democrats have stated before. The Republicans are a danger to the United States Republic. Inciting riots and all that nonsense, right? But the first thing that Democrats will say as soon as they take office, oh yeah, we're excited to work with them. And on the other hand, Republicans are like, no, when we get in office, we'll do whatever the fuck we want, and when we're out of office, we'll stop anything you want from ever happening, right? And so, in those terms, then it's difficult. Like you said, the marching in lockstep. But I also don't think that on the other side we have strength coming from them. And this is my biggest criticism of Obama, and I hope Biden doesn't do the same thing. But like literally with this infrastructure bill, he's doing the exact same thing. So I'm not sure that the bully pulpit's dead. I think it's just not used.
So Prime, that's what
Um,
I want to throw to you because I think you've been very critical of Obama in the past, and you understand like to a T what the Democratic like legislators were like the only the 2 years that he had control, and you understand how they act, but yet you still place this unbelievable barrier that Obama would have been able to overcome all he can do is sign bills, right? Like he can't propose them and write them, right? So where's the how do you arrive at Obama should have done way more, given that you understand that the Democratic senators were going to be ineffective, and then for 6 years he had no control over the House and Senate, right?
So
Well, Senate.
so okay. Good question, I think. All right. So, why am I so critical of Obama? Same reason why I'm critical of Biden now is putting themselves in the position to capitalize on the strengths they do have. Yes, he doesn't have to explain so many times to people. Yes, he does not have control of the Congress, right? He left there, became the president, great. But he's the executive. But he is the head of the Democratic Party, right? And he does have some weight in there, right? So he can influence in how they react. He was a truly popular Democratic president. So it's not like he didn't have weight to pull within the Democratic Party to get his agenda through as it was, right? I think his agenda itself was okay. I try to take a bit of a nuanced take on this because Obama, when he was running, was very happy to wear the praise of progressives, right? Saying he's going to be, oh, doesn't it sound familiar? The most progressive president ever, right? Like as we're saying to Biden, right? So he was very happy to wear that. But if you actually listen to his words, to be fair, he actually wasn't. He was a staunch liberal, right? Like hardcore down the line liberal, and that's how he ruled, right? Or ruled. But that's how he presided over the. Yeah. I'd say that that the he neutered himself in multiple ways. One, in terms of how you actually interact with Congress, right? So I think there were Republicans who might have been movable, but like literally, and this is just how it seems to be. You have to stroke motherfuckers' egos, right? You got to play the game. If you remember, Biden, excuse me, Obama was criticized for not actually wanting to interact with Congress, right, in the way previous presidents did, right? So like Bill Clinton will just like take Republican senators with them on Air Force One, right, when he was going off the place, right? Well, I'm going to go off to like meet a foreign dignitary, right? You Republican senator who's been talking shit about me, right? Would you like to come? Oh, me? Really? Well, yes, because then I can take a picture and I look really fucking important, you know? But this is how it's done. This is how it's done. Like it's It's nonsense, but this is how it's done. And just like working the reins of politics, right? Like as it stands, he wouldn't do that. And then again, sorry, excuse me, Fanatic said it correct previously, right? Saying that when he had the opportunity, so let's say he has no support in the legislator, there's nothing he can do. Like even if you stipulate all that he had nothing, right, and he couldn't do anything, so all he could sit there and maybe write some executive orders sometime, okay, right. But even with the thing that they couldn't take away from him, the executive voice, right, the bully pulpit, he didn't use that, right, to speak out on all these issues when he had the chance to. Every so often it happened, right, and when it did, it was extremely powerful, right. Well, okay, so before he was elected, there was the Philadelphia speech. If you remember that one, there was like a powerful Philadelphia speech on race. That was before he was elected, though. But that was great. And it showed potential. And then, but afterwards, when like the Gates thing happened, the Lewis Gates, he was I think he was a Harvard professor, or Yale professor, I forget. But he was Henry Louis Gates. He got locked outside of his home. And the police came and then arrested him trying to get in. The Fanatic members I'm talking about. And then they had the famous beer summit afterwards, right? The infamous beer summit, where he had like he wouldn't comment on the thing while it was happening, but then he got criticized for not doing anything or saying anything. And then so his idea was, okay, we're going to have this beer summit where they were out like I think the fucking Rose Garden and got Henry Louis Gates and then the cop to sit down and drink beer. I was like, oh, this is us coming together. This is the best answer he had. This hell is it. Like, and then
I was in college. I didn't even know that happened.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. And then finally to wrap it up, so I don't want to take too much time, but I just want to thoroughly answer your question.
Yeah, for sure.
There was him using like it was the Espionage Act, I believe it was, right, against journalists. Right, like more than any other president, like combined, had ever done before. Right, he was doing all these.
Yeah, in the history.
In history, yeah, he had never. No one had ever done that. So like the thing that inspired this question in the first place was the reaction of African Americans, or Black Americans, when I said these things, and at the time, right, or afterwards, when I would just tell the honest facts as they stood, right? I would see their eyes glaze over, right? Like, don't want to talk about it, don't want to hear from it. Absolutely not. I thought this was like a something that just Republicans did. Like, oh, okay, when there's a Democratic president, we'll be better than that. No, we weren't. Not even a little bit. Nope. They did not want to hear it. Did not want to face the reality of it. All right. But like, oh yeah, Obama's doing a good job. Good job of doing what exactly? Did you name that for me? No? Oh, okay. Well, so yeah, there you go.
Same with immigration. Like, immigration was terrible under Obama. Nobody really talks about that like that much.
Dude, it actually worsened.
Yeah.
It got so much worse, right? And Obama wasn't good on it to begin with. Like when he was in office, there was a lot of criticisms. And then Trump came in office and said, let me make it 10 times worse. And that's exactly what he did.
No, but I was speaking to Chris's point, like that like it worsened under Obama to my knowledge.
Yeah,
no. Under Bush.
Yeah,
it
like
just
that's
keeps
why
getting worse and worse. It's crazy.
That's why I'm like trying to like that's why I agree with like you, Gambit, and like all the others. We should look at the actions they did, because when we talk about these issues, we see that like no, they actually don't. And to Prime's point, I agree with you 100%. We've saw like over the last 4 years, the bully pulpit can be extremely useful when a president refuses to shut the fuck up. Obama did a lot of shutting the fuck up, probably in places where he shouldn't have. And I think like to that point, we could say that like maybe he wasn't as effective as he could have been. Like we know that presidents can use the bully pulpit, like FDR, like Woodrow Wilson, shit like that.
But do we think like the stuff that Trump bullies on is because there's a large portion of unfortunately, of our population that's okay with those messages and those things being said?
But the problem is Trump didn't care. Like he would say dumb shit on Twitter. He would say dumb shit and he would have his supporters. But then like he'd also have people who'd be like, yo, that's racist. That's just not right. What did Trump do? Fake news, liberal media. I'm not saying Obama should have gone out and like said fake news or like conservative media or something, but like he could, as the president, definitely hold that stance and be like, no, I'm sorry, you can disagree with this. This is a country where we can disagree, but this is shit we need to take care of. Like the immigration shit that got worse under him. He could have taken that stance on the bully pulpit, and when they came at him for being some like open borders globalist, said, no, that's not who I am. I just don't want to see this country fucking devolve in the way we deal with immigration issues.
Yeah, I think something can definitely be said for like I think sometimes, especially among the African American community, it seems like Obama has like an immunity shield around him, where like it's like he's like devoid from criticism, and I think that can be very dangerous. At the same time, I don't think necessarily comparing Obama to Trump when it comes to like the use of like bully pulpit as a tactic is like equivalent, because like a lot of Trump's use of it was his ability to like sell lies to his supporters. And it like being the first not just being the first African American president, but being like the way that he got elected, it wouldn't have been as probably not as useful as it would have been. But I definitely agree that he probably could have spoke out against Republicans a lot more.
So I will agree with you, Top Dolphin. Maybe the Trump comparison isn't the best, but we can look at other presidents through history who have like been competent and used the bully pulpit to do exactly what you just said. We got Teddy Roosevelt, may not be ideologically aligned with him. He was an imperialist. We got FDR. He did a lot of good shit. Woodrow Wilson. Fuck that guy 100%. But he did use the bully pulpit to like do what you kind of said. Instead of, selling lies to his base, he kind of used it to influence like what he could get done. Like there are presidents that have used this bully pulpit more, right? Like Ronald Reagan would probably be another one who like a lot of people might think are shit, but like he did kind of utilize it in a way where like Trump didn't. Like Trump was completely stupid with it. But, like there are presidents who use this as the tool it's meant, that's there, right? Like
Yeah. So
yeah, definitely.
Yo, Law wanted to get in.
sorry, who are you? Who wants to get in?
Law.
Law? Oh, you had your hand up? I didn't see it.
I didn't have my hand up, but I was just like, I was like kind of wanting to jump in on Top Dolphin's point on the immunity shield that Obama had during his presidency, after his presidency, and just the legacy he left. Just in general, it seemed that like throughout his presidency that it was more of him trying to just be the most baseline likable president. As like Pyro Timer was talking about with Trump in his following presidency, as he could just hop up there, say whatever he wants, and speak to his constituency, and they would hear him, but they would also have that good amount of power because there's a lot of them out there. If in the case of Obama, if he's speaking to Black people, his constituency, just like getting on the stand, doing everything for us, at the end of it, he's gonna get out of office, which we could argue that he should have done more. I do believe he should have done like much more for the communities, but at the same time, just like I'm just speaking like I like how I feel it is from his perspective is just like preserving the legacy of the first Black president instead of being the most active or the most politically, I don't know, having that big political legacy.
But what does that?
Well, so
How do
I'd
you preserve a
actually
legacy
push.
if you didn't do anything.
Yeah,
the
like I'd
legacy
actually
is a
push back
person
on
who
that.
left.
Like,
You're right.
like he does have like it's like he does have to preserve the legacy in a sense, but since he's like the first Black president, he also gets the unique chance to build whatever legacy that's going to be, right? He could have went in there, been the most progressive president in the United States history, and that would have set a precedent and a legacy like, yo, how come we've had like, 44 like 43 other white presidents, and then like the one Black guy was like really fucking progressive? And then like that would set the legacy, right? Especially seeing what came after. It would have emboldened that legacy. Like, even though he might have gotten some things wrong or he might have failed a little bit, we would have been able to look at a President Obama and been like, in a little bit more good faith, been like, yeah, let's go back to some of the progressive shit. Like, if he had done this, but he did it. So like the legacy he kind of wanted to preserve is like seems to be that, boring milquetoast president from like the fucking 80s and the 90s and shit, where we kind of just like, yeah, okay, you're the president and that's about it. At least in my opinion.
I feel like you like to a degree I agree with you on that. Like he could have definitely left a stronger legacy policy wise. And what he did was try to preserve a legacy. But if we have in the future more and more black presidents, aside from being the first, his presidency will be mostly forgotten unless like on like the international scales with some of the other things.
Chris?
But talking domestically.
Thank you.
I think, is it just that Obama wasn't like as loud and he was too like I feel like I heard him speak on race issues and maybe I was listening to him more in his second term because I was out of college then, and during college it was just working and drinking. But I feel like a lot of times I looked at him and he was
Polo,
speaking
do
on
better.
black issues.
All right, do better, buddy. But go ahead.
Do better?
Wait, so
You gotta
come out and speak about these things, but like if there's no action or no like policies being passed or pushed, then
Well,
it's kind of like he's just
but we
saying
un-
something and
we-
not like backing it up.
We understand the policy problem though, right? Like
I just have a
Like-
quick question because I have a very like unique and weird perspective on this. And that's why I'm letting the big boys talk that actually know about this, because like I said, I was like right at the end of high school and I wasn't super politically aware when Obama became president. So like it was a huge thing. Like everybody was like, "Oh my God, a black president!" Like crazy. Didn't really like care too much about like the other political like stuff that he was doing that much. And then by the time the Affordable like Care Act, and this is like what I'm curious about, came up, I was super right wing. Like went down the ultimate like right wing pipeline. Like something I forgot to mention in like my intro. Like I was a nuclear engineer for a long time. I worked with a lot of veterans. I worked in like Navy yards. So like a lot of the people I interacted with were very conservative and very like very right leaning, and they absolutely like hated Obama because of the Affordable Care Act, which also made me hate Obama at the time because I didn't like really understand what was going on. So I like want to know how or if the Affordable Care Act like helped the black community.
I have something to say on the
For
ACA.
sure.
I have strong opinions about this, but Chris had his hand up, so I want to make sure he gets to speak first.
Yeah, I don't want to go back, so I'll go ahead and respond to what you said. Yeah, oh man, I just slipped me.
He talked about
The
ACA.
ACA. Yeah, the ACA.
Yeah.
So yes, it helped a lot of people get in like medical insurance, but at the same time, it was already a terrible like plan, right? It already wasn't anywhere near what we could have had with Medicare for all. And it was it was a compromise.
Medicare for all.
It was
Yeah,
the
like,
bill was a
ACA
compromise.
was like the negotiated position, but like okay, and also like we have to talk about even it got like 20 million people healthcare, but also the what is it? The one of the biggest things in that was like the abolishing of like or not abolishing, but like it was the thing that had to do with pre-existing conditions was huge. So
Yeah.
like not only did it bring like 20 million people healthcare, but like it got rid of like one of the foundations in which like African Americans were like able to be discriminated in like the most.
Let's
When it came to
go
healthcare.
ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so-
Hold on, let Chris. He didn't finish his point, so go to Chris,
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
and then Poli can respond. Like,
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, it was a good thing, but it was honestly like it made some things worse, and also like it gave the people who needed healthcare a lot healthcare, but like with private insurance sticking around, that made insurance like worse for a lot of people who weren't on
This is
Medicare.
It's
Like,
utopian
Like by
fallacy,
worse, you
Yeah,
mean
no,
more
I'm not-
expensive, right? It wasn't actually worse. It was better for tons and tons of people.
So
the
the
Yeah.
fact that like it
You're saying he
standardized
didn't-
like things being covered and
He wasn't going to get us Medicare for all with a Republican Congress. Like,
Yeah.
No, he
Medicare
wasn't.
for All wasn't
But
like
that's not
politically
what I'm saying.
viable at the
Oh
time.
boy.
That's
So,
that's
So
what I'm saying
finish
is
your point, Chris.
like there's like things like yes, that helped, but at the end of the day, because of their screw ups from before, because of their focus being off, they had to like go with these different like these plans that were like ultimately not good enough, and we're still having issues now when it comes to healthcare. Yes, it can't be the most perfect thing, but like when we have the Congress stacked, we have the presidency, and like your main focus is like paying banks off. Like, yeah, sure, we need them, but at the same time, that's because our way our country is built. At the same time, there's so much other stuff they just could have just been rubber stamping like fucking
Chris.
crazy.
you
So-
can't
There-
pass Medicare for all during an
I'm
economic
not saying
recession.
like more than just Medicare for all. I'm not even talking about just Medicare for all, right? Like if Medicare for all was off the table because there was a lot of Democrats who were still against it anyway, there's other things that could have like gone down.
There was an
Like
economic recession, though. It wasn't just that there was Democrats.
So,
I don't think we're
Yeah,
focusing
Medicare
on
for all
Medicare
wouldn't
for
even have
all.
passed.
yeah.
It would have passed.
Why
No,
are we
screw the
focusing
Medicare
on
for all.
Medicare for
oh my
all?
god, there's
keep
so
saying
much.
Medicare for
There's so
all.
much I gotta say on this, but like I'm bursting at the seams to talk about the ECA because I think there's a lot of things you guys are missing and getting wrong here. But I want to get Puller, and then I'll get Fanatic, and then if he doesn't say everything I have to say, then I'll say it. So
We want you to go.
So,
Puller, please.
so I think I've actually I do agree with Prime. What was it like? If you're gonna bring up the Great Compromise, I agree that's probably one of like Obama's failings in the sense that like the potentially what was it like potentially like cutting Social Security or I forget what the other thing was in order to get like the Affordable Care Act passed and no Republicans even voted for it, but they still got it passed. The interesting thing about the ACA is that this is just some data on it. Like uninsured rates fell by like 35% for low, moderate, and middle income families, and that was just the bottom minimum. So it was really good at increasing healthcare coverage. It also slowed healthcare spending growth, which is a massive issue for nations when it comes to the cost of healthcare. It's one of the fastest and most expensive growing industries. It's crazy how much it decreased it, both in the private sector, for Medicare and for Medicaid. Now, I did hear, like, I've seen data that shows that, like, for individuals who weren't on Medicare and Medicaid, that it did go up, but with the exclusion that when you use the online marketplace, I think that's what it was called, that you ended up getting for the same type of plan, you ended up paying less. But a lot of people didn't end up using the online marketplace, from my understanding, and that created a lot of issues. And also, second, I mean, I don't think this is. Maybe I was too young to remember, but I don't think that. I don't think that Medicare for all would be able to pass with the 50 votes needed with the senators back then. Maybe I just forgetting something a big deal.
No,
But
At least
it
something
makes
better
sense.
than like at least
No,
something better
I'm
than
just
ACA.
saying, like, I
Like
don't
it
think.
doesn't have to be Medicare for all,
So-
right? It's
No
just
way.
at least better
Oh
than
god,
that.
I'm still bursting at the seams. All right, go ahead, Fanatic.
He's about to bust a nut, you guys.
Fanatic will do it for me.
No. But I can't because that's not my wheelhouse. But I was just talking about the fact that like when you mention like, oh man, there's so many more things that he could be doing, like so on and so forth. It's just like it's really crazy to me because like at that point, like they're giving the money to the banks. While like obviously I'm not a big fan of like bailing out banks and stuff like that. The idea is like in that moment right there, our country was literally on the verge of collapse. Like that mortgage crisis and the banking crisis, like that, like the two of them things combined, we're literally going to turn our country on its end. It could have literally been the end of the U.S. dollar. So I don't know. I think just being able to say like, oh, there were just some more important things to focus on is just kind of crazy
Not
in
saying
that
like
sense.
yes, you can do that, but there's still that's the point in time where it's like fuck it, let's like do as much as we can. Let's do even more than we set out to
not
do.
during
I
the
feel like that's
collapse.
I
Take
feel like that's a
advantage of the
criticism.
situation.
Bro,
I feel like
if your
that's a
house is on
criticism.
fire, if your house is on fire, you can't run and go order stuff off Amazon and try like you can't usher in utopia during the economic
Okay,
collapse.
all right,
Right?
you did it. All right, here we go.
We're about to bust a nut.
Okay.
Come
I
on,
wanna hear
Prime.
this.
So no,
I wanna hear-
these two things are related. So I wasn't going to mention the bank bailout, but thank you for bringing that up. Wonderful, right? Because it's how Obama handled it, right? So you're not wrong, Fanatic. You're not wrong, Gambit, when you're talking about how bad it was in that moment in 2008, right? In 2009, right? Like it was terrible. Like the position that we were in, like who knows exactly what happened if for instance nothing was done. Like it would have been much worse. But right, like, so what are your options here? Right, you can bail out the banks, right? True, right, and it probably had to be done, right? But you could have also bailed out the homeowners, right? Like that was another option on the table. Is that in that moment, right, when literally everyone, even Republicans, realize the massive fuck up that is our economic system, right? And we're shitting their pants, and we're going to pass anything, right? And they're going to pass anything. Well, then now's the time to bail out the homeowners, to make sure that they come out clean. Instead, like the recession was worsened, right? Like, or the a recession was worsened because the homeowners themselves were being evicted. How about keeping people in their houses? That's another way they could have tackled this, right? But like being the liberal that he was, right, and listening to fucking Larry Summers of Goldman Sachs, right? That was his advisor, telling him Goldman Sachs is explaining how to save the economy, right? How to take care of the American people. Goldman fucking Sachs was doing that, and so you're saying, oh yeah, well he couldn't have Obama Utopia. Who was asking him to do that? Do the basics to actually save the economy. The basics was, yes, having inject cash into the banks, and then also you could have said, well, now we own you all, and you will do as we say. That'd be another thing. I don't know, but whatever. But okay, he's a liberal, so he's not going to do that much. But on the other end, he could have said, well, it's within the liberal wheelhouse, I think, to bail out the people, like the homeowners, who got fucked by subprime mortgages, right? That's the thing you could have done. All right, and then on the other end of it is the ACA. Polar already touched on it a little bit, talking about like the compromise. So at the time, right, that like passing the ACA wasn't like as soon as Obama was in office, right? This is the thing that he was going to do, and you put it out there, and then soon afterwards it was done, and we moved on. No, it was a long, drawn-out fight. First of all, Obama lied, right? Completely fucking lied, pretending he wanted something more, right? That he was going to really revolutionize American healthcare system. Like again, playing into that progressive ideals as to what they thought he was going to do, rather than actually listening to what he was saying. So in that moment, like what should have been, and I think this is where Chris is trying to go to. What should have been the compromise was a public option. You're right, Medicare for all would not have passed. Agreed, right? But a public option could have passed in that moment. And in fact, that's what the Republicans were scared of. They were scared of exactly that. But instead, what Obama did in all his great negotiating skills, oh, so lovely, right? Is that he started out, oh, my position is a public option. That's my starting position. Now let's see where we move. And we move to the ACA. And then on top of that, right? Who did he put in charge? Who did he put in charge of that effort? He put his the White House chief of staff, who's, damn, I always forget all the goddamn time. Used to be the Chicago mayor. One of you guys will know what I'm talking about. He became the Chicago mayor afterwards. If the Top Dolphin is saying something that I couldn't hear because it's muted. Yeah, do you not know who he is? Okay, fuck. Well,
no, I don't.
I'm thinking about House of Cards, so I can't.
Someone's gonna in the chat will help me out. It's he used to be the mayor. And then he's got fucked, and then whatever. Rahm Emanuel, thank you, Rahm Emanuel. Rahm Emanuel was his chief of staff at the time. Rahm Emanuel, who took an incredible amount of money from the Medicare, the private insurance industry, right? They put this guy in charge of revolutionizing the Medicare medical industry, right? And negotiating all of this, right? So you put that guy in charge. So yes, he went with the plan, the Republican plan, that kept all of that in place. That was his option, right? Like instead of like a Democratic idea, he went with the Republican plan. That was his compromise. And then even then, right, there's still merits to the ACA, like you guys pointed out, right? There's still merits to it. Yes, people have gotten coverage when they didn't have coverage before. I mean, the price of that coverage is skyrocketed, and so many people have to left the marketplace any which way because they couldn't afford it. But you know, whatever. But still, more people got coverage. Great. But the ACA before was stronger, right? This is the one thing that Polar left out. Like when he was saying that there was this great compromise and he was like looking for Republican votes, but that process wasn't cost-free. What he was doing for those Republican votes was weakening the ACA. taking coverage and positions out, right? Taking parts of it that would have made it significantly better, all to get Republican votes, and again, a single fucking one, not one. Not one. So he negotiated, right, against himself with the public option, right? But maybe again he didn't actually believe it. He put Rahm Emanuel in charge. Maybe he actually didn't believe it, and that's we can believe that because Obama was bullshitting us during the campaign, right? And then on the other side, when he gets the thing he does want, a Republican plan, he weakens it to the point to get Republican votes just for the sake, because he passed it without Republican votes. He didn't need Republican votes. He did it specifically just for the idea of bipartisanship. That's why he did it. And then he didn't get a single one. And then that was the template for the rest of his presidency, right? Until like the final 2 years when he fucking grew some balls. So.
Well, I think there was not enough Democratic support for a public option during his first 2 terms, according to like polling and a bunch of other stuff. So
hold on, but did he fight for it? Did he like you're saying? Okay, the thing that people don't know what it is. Of course not. Yeah, like if you ask people back then what the
I'm talking about I'm saying in Congress there wasn't support for it.
Yeah,
not just the American people.
I'm saying
so. Like the thing.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead. Oh no, I was
Congress
just gonna.
has to propose.
I know, but like, oh my god! But so what? He is the president, and he came in with a huge mandate, right? He had a whirlwind victory, and he didn't fight for. I'm saying he didn't even fight for it. See, this is the thing that fucking kills me about liberals, and I have to argue with Destiny about this shit all the time, right? Is that like you're begging for crumbs, right? Well, the Congress didn't say they don't want it, so I guess we'll just have to accept it.
They have the right.
So you fight for it though, right? So you spend some of that political capital. So you use that bully pulpit at the time, and again, he didn't need Republican votes to pass it, right? So what he's fighting for,
but he didn't have enough Democrats.
Okay, so like, can I?
Well, what he's fighting against is a Democratic Congress. He's fighting against a Democratic Congress, right? For the most part, right? I think he needed one Republican because he had a full breast of proof majority originally, but then Ted Kennedy died, and then he lost that. So there's that. But he So he was fighting Democrats, not Republicans, but he instead weakened his own position for Republican votes and then get fucking won. An embarrassment.
I don't think that's
he would have
that's
to
exactly
he was weakening his position.
Pyro.
So like, because like I agree a lot with what you're saying, and I think like the confusion comes from like maybe the way it's being put forward. Because like you're right, Prime. I think you're 100% right. The problem with my problem with Obama and the way he negotiated, he started too fucking low, and then when the negotiations started, they just went fucking lower, right? Like I think, and maybe Prime can correct me if like this isn't his point, like he should have started higher when like he started negotiating for like the public option and shit. Maybe he should have started higher, so like if he has to negotiate down within his own party, it's obvious he wasn't going to get the Republican votes anyway, right? Like maybe if he had to negotiate within his own party, maybe he starts shooting for the moon and he's like, you know what, you're right, maybe we can't get like Medicare for all or something. How about a fucking public option though? And then, like, he sets that as maybe the base he's not willing to concede on. I think Prime's 100% right when he says, like, Obama started too low, and then he tried to negotiate with the Republican Party, and, like, they weren't going to get it.
But you also can't pretend, like, okay, it's not like you can just always start at the most radical position and then, like, move farther in. Like, there's a very real possibility that had he started at, like, a Medicare for all type program, that, like, nothing would have been passed.
He wouldn't have been elected. That's what would have happened. He would have never won.
It's about how much it's about how much effort he's putting into it, right? I'm personally okay. Like if he wants to negotiate for shit, like progressive shit, I agree with. If he starts at like the high end of it, and then like, because the legislative process is the way it is, he has to work his way down. Hold on, can I fucking finish my point, please?
You're saying the same thing. That's why I'm trying to ask you a question. You're saying that he should have went higher. That's what.
No, I'm saying.
Did the people that were supporting Medicare for all win this election?
No,
we're now at a place where the public supports it even more, and still the Democrat that went
But
for
the point I
Medicare
was
for all,
the point
still
I
did
was
not
gonna
win the election.
the point I was gonna make, Gambit, before this dumb like point like you're making is like, I'm okay if he can't 100% get what I'm okay with what I want, if he at least tries first. If he has to
The people
argue,
that tried for it don't get elected.
can you be quiet for a second? Obama was already elected, okay? When he had to fucking argue for this shit, right? If he started high up in like the legislative process and then he had to argue his way down, I would be okay with what he got passed if he started from a stronger position. The fact that he started from a weak position for me is a little bit bullshit. That's what I'm saying.
So my question is, would you be okay? Would you be okay if like he started at like Medicare for all, right? That was the starting point, and then he got nothing passed. Like, are you saying that you like if like you would be okay
because
with 20 million people not getting health care
If-
coverage?
No, because no, because that's like that. That's like a
all
no,
the
no, because
positive things of the ACA. Like
so like
none of-
the problem.
Let's say like it's very possible that none of that happens if he starts at something like Medicare for all.
if
What?
you
Because,
honestly
like, this
wait,
idea
no,
that he's, like,
top dolphin,
preaching
can
to,
you
like,
hold no,
Republican
can
voters?
you hold on for a
Because, like,
second?
this idea
Hold on,
that he's like preaching to like Republican, like just because his messaging is like I want Republican voters, if he doesn't have the Democrat votes when he's preaching to Republican votes, he's not actually preaching for Republican votes. He's preaching for Democrat votes
missing
under the guise of preaching for Republican votes. It's like
The dumbest thing. Then the dumbest thing. The dumb. Oh, I'm sorry. But sorry. Pyro,
like,
Pyro. You didn't get a chance to respond. So go Pyro.
Yeah,
and
so
then
like the point,
Polar.
it seems like the point is completely missed, right? I understand the legislative process isn't perfect. I'm not gonna always get what I want. What me and Prime, I think, are talking about is the way he argued for it. I'm not saying he argues for Medicare for all and he doesn't budge and nothing gets done. I'm saying he starts maybe high with Medicare for all, and when they start to hit him back and say shit like that's unfeasible, we can't afford that, he goes lower. For me, I would be okay if he went lower and he got something passed, but he started off on that high position. Prime, hold up, wait. Prime might think different from me, and if that's true, I would like to let him get his view in, but like that's where I'm at. If the president can't get shit done, he needs to at least argue for it and maybe work his way down, because the legislative process isn't him waving a fucking magic wand and getting shit done. He does have to contend with not only the Republicans, but the people in his own party that don't necessarily agree with him. It's always been that way. FDR had to fucking fight down. Like, this is shit that's been happening in this country forever.
Yeah, and like fighting down is a really good thing, which is like definitely what he did. But like, you can't pretend like there's no consequence to like starting higher up, right? So like a lot of times, if you start higher up, like you start at a more extreme position or a less popular position, you start with less people on your side in the original place. And sometimes when you make that way back down from a higher position, people who like what ended up on his side at the end, like to pass the ACA, wouldn't have like been on his side when he got to the ACA position because of where he started. Like that's like a very real thing that happens.
Okay.
It's like the idea. It's like the idea, like when you're like buying something on like online, right? And you go like if you go up to the guy selling like a Game Boy and you say, I want like give it to me for $1, he pushes you out the door, right? But if you say give it to me to $20, you might be able to get him down to like he might like get him down from like 100 to 50, right? Like it's like a it's very simple, right? It's like
no, this is terrible.
Like,
This doesn't make any sense.
This is trash arguments, but like Polar.
Wait, how
Polar.
does this not
No,
make
no,
sense?
I'll tell you
Super
later. But
clear.
Polar, please.
So maybe you can give credence to the point that like there's some like you may be able to ruin negotiations, but I don't know if the extent that Top Dolphin is talking about. So interestingly enough, Obama never ran on the premise of Medicare for all, so I don't think that would have been very popular back in 2008. But we could go directly to the historical information on this, right? So for the public option, okay, there was a whip count done, and it was 43 firm votes in the Senate for yes on the Democratic side as a regular order. Now the problem with this was that this wasn't under reconciliation, which I'm pretty sure that's how public option would have had to go through. And those 43 votes, that didn't include people who maybe didn't want to have the public option under reconciliation for healthcare in general, or for even having a public option in a reconciliation package specifically. So this means that there could have been even less than 43 like firm votes for the public option.
Do you know that?
So this yeah, the potentiality.
No, potentiality. No, do you know that? There was a whip count. There was 43 people who said yes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but do you know? So you said that in another world where like we actually fought for this, right?
Sure.
That in that scenario, under a certain legislative environment, that maybe there would have been less votes, right? But do we know that?
No, but
Okay.
this is something that no Prime, but like this is something that does happen. So for example, the existence of like putting things into reconciliation bills is an issue I think that came up with the $15 minimum wage in the stimulus package. So like actually like Senate rules and such as do play a role into whether like
Explain that.
what so in the for example in the I think it was the Senate bill the Senate like stimulus bill, the $15 minimum
Yeah.
wage is included. Does anyone remember that?
I
It was
remember.
cut
Yeah.
out.
Mhm.
It wasn't like it wasn't a choice. Is
Why?
it like the Democrats going to cut?
No,
because
why
it,
did that happen?
it wasn't supposed to be in there. There's specific Senate rules that
Who
doesn't
made
allow
that?
for it.
Who made that ruling?
It was the, I think it was the Senate
Parliamentarian, yeah, right?
Yeah,
Which is just a
as it was-
ruling. Hold on. The Senate parliamentarian is not some elected official that has any power,
I didn't
right?
say that.
No, okay. Oh, then why are you vesting your argument on the Senate parliamentarian, right? Because the Senate parliamentarian can simply be overruled. So they don't get the final word on this. This is what I've been saying the entire fucking time when it came to that fight with the $15 an hour minimum wage, right? Is that they could literally just overruled and ignored it if they wanted to, but they specifically did not.
That's not the point that I'm making. The point that
Okay.
I'm making is that like legislative rules, quote unquote, can affect whether a senator wants to put something into a bill or not, or support that part of the bill or not.
Maybe.
And that can play into no, it's not maybe because it does happen. All I'm demonstrating is that this does happen and this is a phenomenon. And that could have took those 43 firm votes from a yes to even lower.
But would it have? All right, first of all, okay. So you
We don't know.
Yeah,
What I'm saying,
exactly.
this is-
No, exactly.
but
That's
it's-
the point. You don't
No,
know
but this-
because it was never fought. No, hold on, no. All right. So one, it was never fought for. Period. Right. So it's not like they were moving this down the moving it through Congress, right? And then they realized, well, you know what, this is really not going to make it, right? We thought we had 43 votes, right? But it seems like because of everything that Polar just said, oh, it looks like we have more. Maybe it's close to the 35, right? Well, maybe we can make some deals, right, behind the scenes and push things along, right? But no, that's falling through too, right? This is a failure. You know what? We're gonna have to go back to a drawing board and do something else. We realize that our policy initiative will not pass. Okay, but why this is completely hypothetical, audience, is because none of that fucking happened, right? Because Polar hit on it previously, right? Talking about how like Medicare for all was like not going to pass and there wasn't support for that, right? Well, yeah, and that Obama, for instance, didn't run on that. It's true. He didn't run on any of this, right? And so I was saying before, maybe you missed that part, is that he wore the cloak of progressivism, but in the end was a liberal. So I'm not surprised that he did all the things that he did. He was going to do that because in the end he never actually believed in that. So public option, like I was saying, like look at his actions. Putting Rahm Emanuel in charge was the clearest signal, is that he never actually wanted that in the first place. So I was just talking about, so there's two different things happening here. I was talking about one, how I think it should have been done, like if we were going to get like a public option or something better than a fucking Republican plan, right? So there's that, and my dream as to how Obama would have acted, right? If he was actually progressive, which he wasn't, right? But on the other side of it, right, then there's reality as to how he actually got the ECA passed, right? And that was done terribly too. Even on its face, that was done terribly. So those are two different things, right? And we're mixing the two. So there's one, how it could have gone if he cared about the public action. He didn't. So we can put that aside, right? He never cared about that. It was never going to happen. But on the other side, he wanted to do a Republican plan because he wanted to. He kept talking about how he was fucking how he looked up to Ronald Reagan. That's the thing he did during the campaign trail, right? He wanted to pass a Republican plan. Even that he did badly.
So Prime, even if we run with that example, I'm pretty sure 7 Senate votes for a whip is pretty difficult to get to, especially
You're not
if one of
even
the.
listening to me, but okay.
I mean, like,
No,
we can
but-
we can
No, no,
play
no, no.
hypothetical
So
heroics all we
I'm
want, but
ignoring the hypothetical. So
That-
even if I don't, listen. Even if I don't even run with the aspect of like senators who maybe everyone's a firm yes, they don't care about whether it's reconciliation, whether it was healthcare in the reconciliation bill or regular order. For my understanding, whipping 7 Senate votes is also extremely difficult to get. That's not something that's like super. It's not like we even
Life
have
is
problems
hard,
with this.
bro.
Yeah, it's
There-
really hard. Even with people like Manchin and Cinema, that's something super difficult to do already. So I mean, like maybe you can say that he could have tried and done that. Maybe Prime, like the greatest Senate whip
So-
techniques.
No.
But
can I say something real quick?
I just want to say that again, and then I'll go straight to you, Pyro. is that like once again, I don't think he would have ever done it in the first place. So like we can talk one. I think it's a possibility, and he could have failed. He could have failed. I'm saying the point is he never even fucking tried because going back to reality, he's a fucking liberal, right? A conservative Democrat who went with a Republican plan because he liked Republican ideals and like for instance looking for the marketplace to solve all our issues. So it made sense that he did all the things that he did do, right? And then even then did it badly. But Pyro, please.
So like the thing I wanted to say is like I think this is I'm gonna bring it back to the question. Like the question was like, does he deserve the endless praise? And like my answer, and I think Prime's answer is like, no. He could have done things better where he could have gotten more praise. We're not saying 100% if he did the things we say, he would have won, right? I don't think anyone knows that. But the sad fact is, the way Obama ran, he kind of presented himself like he was, and then he didn't. He did all of the shit that like you're talking about because of the reasons you're talking about, and I'll take that. But for me, it's like if I want to praise the guy, I can't legitimately look at how he ran and how he like did his presidency and give him the endless praise. The hypothetical me and Prime are like kind of supporting, like if he did the things we said, he might be able to receive the endless praise, right? Not endless, but like he might be able to get more praise from at least us too. We're not saying that this would have worked 100% because this hypothetical heroics, right? We're looking at it from a standpoint where we know exactly what happened. We know all of the things that were going on, and now we can make a judgment on that. And I'm not going to say that if he did what I said or what Prime said, he would have been successful because that's like disingenuous. And no one is making that argument. So like trying to attack our argument, like that's what we're saying, like, oh, if he did this, he would have 100% did this. That's fucking bullshit. We're just saying that in the argument that like, yeah, if he would have did this, I would praise him more. That's like my argument. If he would have argued for these things a little bit harder, even if he failed miserably, I would have praised him a little bit more for arguing so hard, right? Like, because we know the president isn't the fucking dictator of the Americas. We know there is a legislative body, and sometimes presidents don't get what they fucking want. Like, that's the reality. I'm just saying if he argued for it a little bit more, I would have praised him a little bit more. But he didn't, so I don't.
Let's go to Chris.
I completely agree. That's what I was trying to get out in the beginning, is that like, even if your legacy is just like Obama, he tried to do the most for black people and poor people, but failed miserably. That's like, I would look up to him way more than I do what I do now, right? I would praise him way more. I would like think highly of him when I think back on those years, right? But like, I can't, because like when it came to these massive issues, like not just economic, not just like policy wise, just socially, like he was not good on any of it. He just wasn't. And like when you look for him to like be that, like he's the first black president, like when something horrible happens to the black community, or like the black community has to face it, you're not the face of it, you're not out there like the number one guy, like what's going on? Like, what are you doing? Why are you hiding every time these issues come up? Right. So like it's just like he could have put it on a way better face, even if he's gonna fail miserably the whole time. He would have gotten much more respect, and like the country probably wouldn't be in the shape it is socially right now if he would have tried to look like a lot harder than what he did.
Wait, so you're saying that Obama would be a better president if he preached for the things you wanted and got absolutely nothing done? Than if he got things like if he got like half positions.
I just
done.
preached fought for. He said fought for.
Fought for.
Yeah,
Fought
and I said
for
in
it.
the beginning, even if he would have threw some like Hail Mary like executive orders out there, right, that wouldn't have like lasted. At least that like he showed the people he was trying to do something. Give it like trying to like, hey, here's an idea of something that we could do. Like, let's see if this works. And if it doesn't, it's an executive order. It's going to go away.
Let's look at what Trump.
but-
Like, this is what Trump did, right? You cannot agree with any of the shit he did, but he fought for it, right? He said the dumb shit on his opening. He said the dumb shit on Twitter. But then what did he do when it came to legislation? When they said no, he was like, "Fuck democracy! I'm doing Executive Order 1991. We're gonna ban all Muslims. Execute Order 66. We're gonna lock up the Mexicans." Like, he did this shit. He fought for it. for it. And I don't agree with the shit he fought for, but the fact is, Trump fought for his position way more than Obama fought for the ones he kind of preached at the opening. And that's where my problem lies. And I think that's where like Chris' problems lie in either. Like, if he would have like at least fought for it a little bit in Congress and the legislative branch, maybe done some of these Hail Mary executive orders, which could be repealed with Trump, which would probably be the case, right? But then we could at least say he fucking fought for it hard. We wouldn't be having this discussion of like, well, did he weasel out of it or did he actually fight for it? We would actually be able to say, yes, he did. He failed because it's a democracy and the legislative branch is against him. But now we're having the discussion of, did he actually do it? And no, he didn't.
No, not did he
Yeah,
actually
I
do
guess
it.
I
Did he-
just
did he
prefer to
even want it?
evaluate
Did
presidents
he
on the
even want it?
policies that they actually pass than like the platitudes that they speak up about. Like,
Wait, I have a
Man,
question.
you're still not understanding. Like,
I don't think you're listening, but go ahead. Let's go with Polar, please.
Yeah, so maybe just to get a better understanding of it, like I think I'm getting closer and closer to this. So, like if there's a president that may know that like a policy position is gonna fail in like Congress, but it's something that you really support, do you still want that president to fight for it, even if they know that it's gonna like end up failing, or has like a very
Yes.
good chance of failing?
look, if
Yeah,
I had
I mean,
a
like-
lawyer, if I had a lawyer and I was absolutely guilty of something, and my lawyer knew that, if he didn't go in that courtroom and still fight for it the hardest he could, even knowing he's going to lose 100%, like what the fuck kind of lawyer is that, right?
Wait,
I'm
so
not
I think
saying
that-
the
well,
president is
so
our
that's-
lawyer.
that's
I'm
actually,
saying,
wait,
like,
Politics
That
is
actually
completely
does
different.
touch
I have
on
a
a
different
little
answer
bit.
to this, but go ahead.
Hold
Maybe
So-
Pyro, do you want Pyro to answer to get all of our
yeah,
positions?
you got y'all go
Okay.
answer everyone.
I would
real-
just say, like, in short, yeah, like, if I have a president that, like, I think holds ideological views that agree with mine, and, like, I realize not everyone would do with that, I would support them more if they actually demonstrated that they're willing to fight for it rather than, like, do the Obama thing of saying they will, and then once they actually get into power, they don't, and then once they leave power, start preaching more fucking progressive shit. Like, that's kind of what Obama did. Like, he started preaching more progressive shit after he left office and before he was in the presidential office. And then while he was in the office, he didn't do it, right? Like, I have a problem with that. Now, if he was consistent all throughout the line and he failed miserably and he got shot down every time, even though he was an ineffective president, I would still say, like, yeah, he fought for his beliefs and that just wasn't the time of the country. Sucks ass, but at least he fought for what I believed in. I would 100% take that.
So I'll answer your question, Polar, right? But and by posing another question towards you, right? And to do that, I'll use the Sandy Hook incident, the massacre,
Sure.
as a example. So during that, right? So Obama came out. This was one of his strongest moments, I think, right? Sandy Hook massacre happens. 20 white babies are lost to gun violence, right? Get rid of all guns. That's from my buddy Beemore out there. 20 white babies, the kind they actually care about, were killed. And so he goes in front of the country and says something has to be done and has to be done now, right? And so he sends Biden out to Congress, right, to make this happen, right, to get like quote, common sense of gun reform. Not even like what I want to do, certainly not, nothing close to what I want to do, but to get quote, common sense gun reform passed, and they fail miserably. Who would have known that? Anyone watching politics would have known it was going to fail miserably. But so my question, go ahead.
Why you say the kind they actually care about though?
I mean, look, we're keeping it real, right?
But
So
real
hold
quick,
on. Let me finish my point. So to Polar, my response to you in the form of a question: was it worth it for Obama to fight for the thing that his voters wanted? Common sense gun regulation, right? Democrats won it, and then even Republicans won it as well, like the Republican voters, right? Was it worth it for him to fight that battle, even though it was inevitable that he was going to lose? I ask you that.
Sure. So I think that's a good question. So the way that I would judge something like this is like, yes, the reason that it may be useful for him to get reelected, right? So let's say it's X policy position that matters to him a lot more, but that isn't as like soluble to voters. I would say probably not. And so there's so for example, right, if you know that like even though this bill isn't going to pass, but this will help you get reelected, I completely understand why a president would do that. But if it's for a policy that like the majority, like your voters don't really care about, and you end up trying to pass a bill that you know is going to fail on impact, I think that's one, not only harmful to like your chance of getting reelected because you maybe end up failing, but secondly, that may harm the way that your whips are viewed. So like political capital in that sense. So it may make it more difficult for your whips to be able to negotiate within your party to get the things that you want. That's a pretty big deal. And that was what specifically would have happened with this bill is that like, so for example, let's say you do want Medicare for all, your Senate whip now has to negotiate with the other Democrats to get the things that they want. If you vote for this bill, we'll end up voting on this. What's the word? There's a specific term for like
like
pig
pork,
something.
pork.
Yeah, pork.
Mhm.
Is that where like it specifically appeals to the constituents of that area, and you may end up using that political capital. They get the bill that they want, but not necessarily the one that you want, and they may end up requiring you to do more in the future to gain those votes. Let's say if they're more conservative Democrats. So I think that's a pretty
So
nuanced position on it, but I hope you understand what I'm
I
saying.
do understand what you're saying. We're going to go to Gilly and then Fanatic. But I see what you're saying, and I understand what you're trying to tell me. I think I disagree with you on a few points, but I see where you're going with this, and I think we can actually maybe come to consensus around this. But go ahead, Gilly, please.
So I'm kind of just like sitting in the middle, kind of just listening to both sides and like deciding like what I think. I kind of get what Top is saying, and I think Chris bringing up the lawyers was more to Top's point. Like lawyers literally do plea deals for a reason. Like because if they know something is literally gonna fail, there's no point. It's like better to get something that is good than like absolutely nothing at all. And like I'm still not decided on each side, but I think like I kind of get where Top is coming from.
Disagree.
My man.
So like
I disagree.
you don't
Prime
think that?
doesn't like this.
Oh, sorry, Fanatic's turn.
Yeah. Let's go to Fanatic. And then yeah.
Yeah, really quickly, I was just gonna say, I would say that there's actually a super benefit when you have presidents fighting for things, even if they know they won't do it. And I think that we see that benefit all the time through congressmen. I believe that like a lot of times that they can like shift the Overton window by like bringing conversation to the forefront. I say that was something that Bernie Sanders did. He's been a broken record for God knows how long, pushing these same ridiculous policies. Not all of them are ridiculous. Some of them are actually beautiful, and I'm a big fan of his actually. But he's been pushing these policies when they were considered ridiculous, and in doing so, some of those things end up shifting you over to windows such that now these things are like actual conversations that we're willing to have and willing to entertain. And so I would say that, yeah, I would want them to do that. Now, I would not say, I do think that these things have to be done feasibly. I think this is kind of in line with someone else who was speaking on this. I think there are times where you literally can lose your political capital for a while.
Yeah.
Because if you get people to start pushing for the idea, like I'm pushing for this thing that we know will never win, then what you end up getting is eventually you start, one, seeming ineffective for trying to do things and never succeeding. Two, you got people that have like literally stuck their neck out for things that literally had no chances of passing. And now you've like used up your capital. I think there's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't. I do think it takes nuance, and but there is a reason why you should do it on occasion.
Yeah,
You already had
can I-
Drew.
So for moving the Overton window, this is why that people like senators in like really safe districts are the people who are most effective at moving the Overton window, and not the president of the United States. Because like when Bernie Sanders like goes out and preaches Medicare for all, there's no risk to that, right? He doesn't like he can't lose anything. He's not going to lose his seat. Right. But when Obama does it, he loses political capital, he loses support, he loses senators, and like even possibly like loses elections. He didn't lose his reelection, but like there's like when you want to have conversations on like to move the Overton window, those are way better done on like the edges or in the safe districts rather than like looking to your president for those things. And that's how it's like happened historically.
I see.
I also can I.
I'm just saying. I see what you're saying. So Puller, add in your point, and then we'll go to Chris.
So, the Fanatic, I actually do agree, and I also agree with Top Dolphin's point on that. Very safe districts tend to be the most progressive and push the Overton window. But at the same time, even when it comes to Medicare for all, imagine if we had spent a lot of political capital, on the force the vote. Okay, I don't know. You guys remember the whole force the vote thing, where they were gonna get specific Congress people to vote, like to show if they were gonna support Medicare for all, and it was gonna be all great because then you'd signify who was in support of it and who it wasn't. It was like a weird form of virtue signaling, and it was gonna fail on impact. And that's an example of something that I would never, ever, 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 ever want to see, like Biden going super hard for, knowing that it would fail. Even Bernie Sanders, if Bernie Sanders is president in our current situation, I wouldn't want to see him do that.
Hold on, I want to just quickly address something that someone said in chat, that the bank bailout was passed by Bush, right? It happened at the very end of his term. And if I remember this correctly, and if I've not, then I apologize, but if I remember the timeline correctly, what happened, this was revealed like later on, what happened was that the Bush people came to Obama. So Obama has been elected, right? He's been elected, but not in office. Bush people came to Obama and said, like, this is the plan. This is what we're going to do. But since you're coming on, right, and you're going to have to execute this, like, are you on board? Like, with what we're doing? At that point in time, he actually did have leverage to decide what the plan was going to look like. If I'm remembering this correctly, and I believe I am, but he actually had leverage to decide what it's going to look like. But even, let's say, sure, like, just go with this plan. As I mean, after that, you know, with like the 2 years that he had, right, and the political capital that he did, that he kind of pushed for a homeowner bailout as well. So I just want to address that very quickly.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so let me add on. So at the same time, I think so sometimes it feels as if people, like, when it comes to bailouts, bailouts can be like are really difficult because so you mentioned this, but it's most of the time the Secretary of the Treasury. It's pretty like when the bill. I'm pretty sure when a bill like that is signed into to pass and they come to him because he has to execute it, it's not as much like what he specifically would have to do. I don't remember who the Secretary of the Treasury was, but I think it was very heavily on the Treasury to like determine which banks that end up getting it, or if the banks are specifically put into legislation. So I'm curious, like, I don't know that much about it, but I'm curious to see like the executive action that he could have done to maybe alter it. And then secondly, whenever it comes to like bailing out homeowners, I've heard this idea a lot, but at the same time, I'm just curious how this will like logistically work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because for example, right, like issuing out like bailouts for like it takes about, I think, the same amount of work for like okay, there's a good article on this. Just give me 1 second that poses this really good example. Sorry. Okay, so it could take as much work to identify all the investors in a single $300,000 mortgage than it does to execute a $3 billion federal investment, like a bailout for a bank with thousands of customers. So like the logistics of a homeowner bailout can be more expensive, I think, even for the same amount of money that you're proposing. But I'm more than interested to hearing the plan or what it would take, because this is the same issue that the Federal Reserve would have to run into if they end up like trying to loan out to like individual like citizens as well.
Okay, so Chris has been waiting patiently.
Um, uh, there was a lot of good things Polo brought up, but I wanted to address something that was before. Obama had no political capital in his second term. We already knew that. He had nothing to lose, honestly. I don't know what political capital he has to lose when he's on his last term. He can't go up for re-election anyway. There's things he could have pushed for or got into the public eye with that he just didn't. When it came to the Ferguson situation, he could have got in front of that. He had nothing to lose on that, and like he just kind of let black people fight that battle by ourselves when like he has one of the largest platforms in the world, if not the largest platform in the world. He could have done more speaking to that. Yes, he's done like speeches on race, but like they don't hit hard when like they're not in the middle of something that's actually going on, right? You can miss some of those. But I mean, if he's not like boots on the ground, he's not on the ground. If he's not in our faces, then like we don't see him as much, and people start to resent. And that's what happened.
So I'm to try and push this a bit towards like the end of his presidency, like the second term. One of the issues I have a problem with, like, and this is like part of the same type of a rhetoric I've been talking about, is like when it came to Merrick Garland, right? Like, and the Republicans fought that shit, and he kind of let them get away with it. I would have been happier if he would have fought more for the Merrick Garland fucking seat on the Supreme Court. And if he still failed with that, I would have looked at him a little bit more favorably and said, at least he fought for that seat. Because when Lindsey Graham said, what was it? When we try and do this with a Republican president, we expect you to say no. Everybody and their grandmothers knew that was a fucking lie. And then what happened? Turned out to be a fucking lie. So my question now, in reality, is like, we knew it was a fucking lie. My great grandmother, who's dead, knew it was a fucking lie. Why did Obama let that happen at the end of his presidency when he didn't have to worry about re-election and shit? Like, why did he let that happen? And that's one of the issues where I will say, like, if he would have fought more for it and failed, I would have looked at him more favorably, right? Like, when we talk about like how these things get passed, that's one thing. Like, if he can't get shit passed, for me, he can't get shit passed. But if he doesn't even fight for it, dude, pussy move. Like,
He
come
already
on.
looked incompetent,
So
right?
I
He
want
had
to,
that.
I want to address something that Chris said, and I think some of the things that happened around Ferguson was unfortunate, right? So when the Ferguson thing happened, that was the hands up, don't shoot, and then there seemed to be information, and I even remember this during the early parts of this investigation where it seemed as if what was being communicated to the public wasn't what happened, and it was like proven in court and things like that, right? So maybe that wasn't the most opportunistic case to do what you're asking for. I think that like part of his speech was something like I'm trying to find it. I can't find it. It was
That's
something
more
like,
an
"Hey,
example. Like,
it was
still,
like, hey, we'll let the political process play out. I mean, the judicial process play out, right?" And I think that may have been because he was informed on the popular tropes in our narrative just weren't true. So I agree with you that he should definitely be out standing for injustice within our justice system and police and all of that. But I don't know if that case specifically was the best one to do it, being that a lot of the hyperbolic things around that were kind of founded on a lie, right?
okay. Even if I
I
grant
mean,
you
it's
that,
unfortunate, but
yeah.
yeah.
Even if I grant you that, and like just take that one off the table, still plenty of others to go around, right? That happened at the time. Maybe not all
Like
of them got
Tamir
like,
Rice. I think Tamir Rice was what?
yeah, and
Yeah.
like Trayvon Martin, there was a bunch in my state of Ohio, kids getting like gunned down, like either unarmed or with toys. Like it was crazy. People getting shot in Walmarts by cops. It was like for a lot of like Obama years, it was just like a lot of like it was a lot of black people getting
But,
killed for ridiculous
but I'm
reasons,
pretty
right?
sure
So,
he spoke on something. Are you saying that he didn't speak on that?
No, like as far as like being socially like a Black Lives Matter supporter, like or like even socially constantly pushing these things when you know you have like your policy on the policy side, you like things are going terribly, right? At least like I keep saying on the social side, seeing all these things happen on the internet where like far right extremism was starting to like increase like more and more. Like these things like the alt right become popular. Like you try to like if you can't fight on one front, you go to the next and see what you can do there. And like he had all the opportunity just to do that, to at least give himself like just to make himself like an image, an icon for the people, like to inspire people to like to fight more, to do more. He didn't give off that image, right? He just gave off the image of like basic democratic like the Democrat Party politics, right? The same democratic politics that's been going on like for forever.
okay.
I would also.
Yeah.
Okay. And sure. So okay. Well, who? So we have Pyro and Polar. All right. Well, you guys go, but then let's move on to the next topic. We've run out of time.
Okay, so like before we move on to the next topic, I want to take it to like the second part of the question that was presented. Is it wrong to be critical of him, as that might give ammunition to bad actors? And I don't think so. I don't think that, holds, and I don't think that should be a thing we worry about when we're talking about like the presidency and who leads the country, right? Like how many white presidents have there been where they have done literally the most dog shit things? Again, I will say for the audience, fuck Woodrow Wilson in hell. I don't like the dude. But, they did bad things, and while we can criticize them for their policies and their actions and such, like, didn't necessarily stop another white guy from running again and winning. I don't see being critical of maybe some of the things we can say maybe he did negatively, like the immigration thing that got worse under his presidency. I don't think being critical of that, is giving ammunition to bad actors, because like if we can all come to a consensus on like something like that, then yeah, that like, maybe that was a bad thing that he should be criticized about. Like maybe if the bad actors hit on shit that's actually legitimate, they have the one point. Right now if they hit shit like he wore the tan suit and that's a threat to our national security, we can fucking be like, no, that's stupid and wrong, and like maybe explain how that is. But like when it comes to legitimate criticisms, I think that's the key part of it. We need to have legitimate criticisms of the Obama presidency and not like hollow fucking ammunition, right? Like, because I don't think that's a point, like giving ammunition to bad actors.
I think while I agree that it's probably not the largest concern, giving ammunition to bad actors, like we can't really compare someone like Woodrow Wilson because he's white and a dude. But like when we think of people that end up getting a lot of criticism and as a result get like a bunch of like maybe racial based or religious based hate, we can look at people like Ilhan Omar or AOC. A lot of times when they get hate, a lot of Republicans or a lot of more like racist people will throw in things about maybe Ilhan's like religion or like race or like the fact that she's a woman, and this is something that seems to be more of an issue. I don't think that we shouldn't criticize like Obama or other like maybe minority figures because they're minorities, but I do think it's important that we also take into account that people may like bad actors may use this as ammunition, so that
Well,
maybe prefacing our statements or working to make sure that these are the actual criticisms that get out, because these things are consistently thrown at people like the Squad, or this was casually used against Obama, but this is becoming something that's more common.
Well, I think in that sense, like these bad actors, like, in terms of race and religion, people who are like so about their religion, they don't care, or like they hate other religions, people who are so about their race that they're, fucking racist and shit. I think these bad actors, no matter what, are going to find something to latch to. Like with Obama, literally, there was an uproar for about 2 weeks because he wore a tan suit, and that's not usually the norm, right? They're going to find something. I'm okay with levying legit criticisms and fighting against the negative one. So like when people go out against Ilhan Omar because like, you're just saying the shit about Israel and whatnot because you're a Muslim, I think we can fight back against that. But like if they bring up a legitimate criticism of the way she does her policy or the effects it may have, I think we can actually be like, yeah, you are still a part of the legislative branch, and we should be able to criticize that. Like, I think we need to just like be focus on fighting against the negative criticisms from the bad actors, because they're just that, bad actors. No matter what we say, they're going to find some reason to be against these people. Like we'll levy a criticism that might be legit, and then they'll like be like, yeah, and then add on something that's bullshit.
I think the argument for criticisms is more like if we like as like if you're on the left, right, and you like criticize someone on the left, the idea is that like a bad actor might take that legitimate criticism that you post and then like add something to it, right?
And I
then,
think
like,
that's where you correct them and say, no, it's not this add-on that you added. It's this specific issue. I think that's a problem with the left in general when it comes to that type of shit.
Pirate, here's what I'll say about that though. So, while I agree that bad actors will find anything, one of the issues with like a bad actor is that they may try appealing to other people who are like more moderate, right? So, for example, if like you're Ilhan Omar and you make a criticism maybe about the way that Israel is handling itself, one of the big ones is I think that like she got in a bunch of like I don't remember. She may have actually said. I'm just gonna go with the hypothetical here,
Yeah.
but I don't remember if she actually said something anti-Semitic or not.
It wasn't. It
but
wasn't.
now-
I'm gonna go down that
I'm gonna
road.
trust you on that one. I'm gonna trust you on that one.
Okay.
But the difference is that tan suit is like maybe it's gonna do a lot. It's gonna have to do a lot more work to appeal to like moderate people as being like this like really negative criticism in comparison to like, oh well, Ilhan Omar, she's anti-Semitic. Here's what she specifically said as a way to appeal to more moderate actors, which is the issue. Also, secondly, it's a lot more work to. It's a lot more difficult to just come out after a statement is done. So one of the most important things that I've ever learned is that like if there's ever something being said about you or an issue or a scandal that's going on, it's probably best to get on it as quick as possible, because you'd rather not have that scandal happen in comparison to having to address it later. So even if bad actors start coming out and saying like, oh well, she's this and that, people may have already seen it, and the work that you may do to say, oh, we're calling you out on this, it may already be too late. And that's something that's very common. People will see headlines or stories and such as, and they don't really care to take another look at it. I mean, people are lazy these days.
Well, see, I will respond
I want to really move forward to the next one because.
Can I respond real quick to that?
Very
It'll
quick,
be real quick.
Very quickly. Yeah.
Okay, to that, I will say it's in part on responsibility on the politicians when they see this type of shit arise. Like, you might want to respond quickly so you can at least get your word out. With the public and shit, yeah, this is an unfortunate reality that, like, yeah, some people's minds won't be changed. I don't think that should influence how we look at our legislators and the people who run our country, and that's it.
Okay, so and we'll move on to the next one. If I'm remembering correctly, for what Ilhan Omar said, there was a comment about like the Israeli lobby and how they interact with um, Congress, and I believe her comment was it's all about the Benjamins, saying that like any other lobby, like money exchanges hands, and they took that to be like, oh, this is anti-Semitic. Like what? Huh? So that a lobby acts like a lobby? Like amazing. But okay. So yeah, that I thought was extremely bad faith interpretation of what she said. But all right. Moving on. So topic 2. Yet another unmarked burial ground was uncovered at a Canadian residential school, holding up to 750 bodies. These are likely to be children who attended the school. This school will, like most other residential schools, was run by the Catholic Church. Considering this, along with all the other atrocities the organization has been involved in, is it immoral to in any way support the Catholic Church? And should the church be disbanded and replaced with something new? Okay, I have lots to say on this. But first, we'll start with our good friend, Fanatic.
Yeah, so I'm not a fan of the Catholic Church, like, at all. But I don't think you would ever be able to make the statement that because, like, some bad things happen, that we just can't support the church as a whole, because plenty of good things happen.
You're a little low. Am I the only one? It sounds like a background noise, and then like it's like a humming, and I can hear you very well.
Let me
Sounds
see. I
like
can try to
an
raise.
AC or something.
Yeah, I don't know what yeah, try to get maybe close to your mic or something. I don't know. But try it again.
Is that any better?
Slightly, yeah, a bit.
Is that any
That's
better?
yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Okay, here. I'll just get closer. So yeah, I would say that you can't judge something by you can't judge it solely by the bad thing that it's done, because it's done plenty of great things as well. So for me, I just don't think that we'd ever be able to come to the conclusion that, like, no, we just can't support them in any capacity. But what I will say is that they do they have done plenty of terrible things, and a lot of times it seems like they're not really held accountable, and that's something that kind of scares me. But again, like, there's such an enormous amount of middle ground between that and like saying we gotta like it's immoral to support them, and then furthermore, like the idea of like undoing it and like coming up with something new. I don't even know who or what would have the authority to do anything like that. There's people's religious beliefs, and I know about plenty of charities and things like that that have happened as a result of the Catholic Church. So it's hard for me to even entertain the idea. Like, no, we just got to get rid of it altogether. It just sounds unrealistic.
Gilly.
So I think like the Catholic Church is dog shit, but like Fanatic was saying, I don't think it's immoral to support the church. I feel like people should be able to practice whatever religion they want. That's literally one of the main benefits of this country. And what was the second part of the question? Should the church be disbanded? Absolutely not.
Okay.
Well, you're
We'll
gonna
wait
hate
for
mine.
GSU to get back and get to him. All right. We'll go to Law.
Well, with this one, it's kind of like a mixed bag question for me. As far as, let me get my first statement out. The Catholic Church, and its actions are almost wholly negative. With its like impacts on the, not completely wholly negative, but there's a lot of negative that comes out of the Catholic Church. Now, what it's coming from, like the root of it, just pure based Christianity. Like I identify as a Christian, but the Catholic Church and a lot of the things that it stands for is horrible. Should it be disbanded? The status in which it's in like I'm leaning closer to yes than no, honestly. But like really, I think it should just be like given less power, or just like taken away, like, because it has a lot of influences within our schools, within just like different aspects of United States life, where it really shouldn't have as much power as it should, because we boast religious freedom, XYZ. But I'll get more into it as we get further.
Okay. Top Dolphin.
Man, this is something that's like super difficult for me. As someone who's like somewhat religious a little bit, um, I'm like have been like in my like head. I've been like trying like debating the idea of whether I should like publicly like be a religious person because like religious people push for so many negative things and they do so much harm and they push for so many things that I just don't believe in. And I think something can be said similarly for like the Catholic Church. I'm not like Catholic, but they do like a lot of really bad things, and it's like really hard to say like, oh, like should this organization be supported or even exist? That's like a really like difficult question, I think.
Polar.
I think the unmarked graves is like, it's not specific to Canada, which is so the residential schools aren't specific to Canada, right? This is a very big stint, and I think like 1800s all the way to I don't think it was early 1900s, but I know this is really big in the 19th century, where a way of cultural genocide was taking away Native children away from their homes and trying to get rid of all of their culture and turn them like good, white children, just terrible, right? So specifically, this isn't unique, which is the really sad part. This could have happened to Native Americans who like once presided where we live now. But the very interesting part about this is these aren't mass graves. So this wasn't like where a bunch of people were like put into the same place. These were 215, most likely I think separate deaths over the course of I think like 125 years. And the sad thing about this is that the Roman Catholic Church, that was responsible for 70% of these schools, hasn't apologized yet, which is very saddening. I think it's disgusting. But to say that, I don't know if I would say that, like, I don't think we should like disband the Catholic Church, but is it immoral to support? I think that's an interesting question. It's tough. I think I would probably put it in the sense it's probably morally neutral to support the Catholic Church. But that's kind of my position on this now.
All right. Let's go to. Man, people moved around on my screen. All right. Let's go to Pyro.
So the way I look at this question is kind of in two lights, because like Polar's 100% right, and I will like maybe strengthen that point a bit. We did do this in America, right? Like we did kind of adopt Native children, put them into boarding schools and shit, and try and what was the word? Socialize them, fucking modernize them, make them less savage. That's the language we used, right? So we did do this. And it's not something that's necessarily attached to the Catholic Church. I think answering the question when it comes like to should we abolish the Catholic Church or whatnot, I wouldn't necessarily hold like the churches themselves in like these other countries responsible. More so would I point to the fucking city of gold Vatican and be like, yo, what the fuck? Why aren't you actually addressing the multitude of issues you have? Because it's not just, these issues that they're not taking responsibility for, right? Like, there is the pedophilia shit. There is the fact that, when we look at history, like they aligned with the Nazis so they could get their own country and shit. Like the Vatican specifically, that head of the Catholic Church, I would not be opposed to cutting that off and letting the religion try and survive whatever way it did, as long as it didn't like violate other people's rights and shit, as long as it didn't do obscene shit. Like, I'm okay with the religion itself. I'm okay with the sects and churches we have here, because not necessarily all of them agree with what the Vatican ordained, back in the day, right? Like, I think a lot of this, because this institution has a state and a head of it that we can look at, I think we need to look at them and be like, yo, are you actually going to condemn the shit y'all did in the past? Because that's kind of your duty as like a religious moral figure, or not? When it comes to morally, I honestly can say I don't know, because I look at it from like, our side of the planet, and how we run the Catholic Church may not necessarily align from like, the Western European fucking Vatican shit. So I necessarily wouldn't say I would condemn like all of it, but like I would condemn a lot of the shit from the Vatican that they haven't addressed it shit. I would condemn a lot of these actions for like, the places that decided, yeah, we're going to follow these doctrines and shit. But like the Vatican, I think, is the head of the problem.
Let's go to, I think that's everyone other than GSU.
Oh, and
Oh, sorry. Again, everything moved around on my screen, so I apologize. Chris, and then GSU.
okay. how many crimes against humanity does the Catholic Church have to commit before we classify them as a cult or a terrorist organization? How many things do they need to do before we were just like, you know what? Nope. Other organizations have did way less, and we wiped them out completely. Um, Look, the Catholic Church absorbs a ton of wealth when it comes to like the Christian religion in general. A lot of wealth goes to them. They use that wealth to run pedophile rings, to commit atrocities like around the world, and they've been doing it for like hundreds of years, and we have documented proof of it. And like they're still able to like operate everywhere, like with almost impunity. Like this is insane. We don't give any other organization that sort of leeway. If we're not like at least pointing it out, we're like actively fighting against organizations like that around the world. So why is it that this one religious organization, I'm not talking about Christianity in general, I'm talking about just the Catholic Church, which like if you're operating on like the teachings of Jesus, then like the Catholic Church is the last place you want to be. They're all about the rituals of this thing, right? And a lot of times they use those rituals to like convince some people of some crazy things, or like convince them to go along with some crazy things, or like convince the like church staff that that they can use these things for like means against people who are like completely believing in them solely, like right. This is all some of these people know from when they're kids growing like to when they grow up. They're either being abused like sexually or physically, right? Or like just like the things that like we don't even know about what they've been doing to nuns, right? To their own like staff and like the people who work for them. We're still uncovering things that just like are continuously coming out. How much more do we need before we just pull the plug on this? All right, like that's all I'm asking.
There was an article, to your point, Crystal, we'll go to Gambit. There was an article about how people were treated within the organization. And guess what? There was rape. So move on. Let's go to Chia Gambit.
Yeah, so I think like most things, when there are people who do bad things, they should be condemned. In the case of this, where it seems like there's something that happened in the past, I think it was Pyro or maybe it was Polar that talked about how like they should say, hey, we did this thing and this thing was wrong. I absolutely agree with that. But the idea that I would ever support anything that could encroach on religious freedom is absolutely asinine. So the idea of disbanding a religion, whatever that would mean to y'all, the idea that I would support it in any way is absolute nonsense. Do I think it's immoral to support the Catholic Church? No, I don't. I think that, of course, they've been responsible for bad things, but I also think that they've been responsible for good things. So I don't think it's a net negative, but yeah, the idea that we should encroach in any way on religious freedom and whatever disbanding of a church means to y'all, I absolutely oppose it.
Just for
We
the
shouldn't.
well, we're going to go to open panel right now. But just so it's clear, the question, it wasn't religious freedom saying that like you can't. The point was, is it immoral to do so? And disbanding is like, okay, well, like what if you just like got rid of the organization and replaced it, but not saying that like making it illegal to 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 support the Catholic Church. I want to make it very clear as to what the terms were.
Well,
I don't
I
get how
think
we
I'll-
stop
go ahead.
them from organizing.
I'll respond to that
Yeah.
because, like, I think the problem when we talk about like a lot of religious shit, especially the Catholics, you say disband the church, and I understand what you mean when you say like you want to separate it from like you can't practice the religion versus like we're just gonna break up the organization. Unfortunately, a lot of Catholics will see the disbanding as a threat to their religious freedom, and that's exactly how they will argue it. No matter how many times you say we will still let you practice the religion, we just won't let you be organized in this way where you can get away with that
So-
shit. Like that's
No,
something
no,
that
hold on.
probably
I gotta really be clear because this is what I'm asking. I'm not asking that. All I'm asking is, would it be a good thing if it was disbanded, right? Not that any power has to come in, right, and like destroy the Vatican, like drop a bomb. Like I'm not asking for any of that. I'm saying that if it were to be disbanded, right, would that be a better outcome if we got rid of the Catholic Church and placed something
okay,
new
I see
instead?
what you mean.
My
Okay,
wording
sorry.
was unclear, so I understand. But okay.
I feel I feel like that would be absolutely like catastrophic instead of like really bad like precedent. Like how far would we go with that? Because I'm pretty sure most like organizations that have to do with religion has had like a really shitty past, especially since a lot of these started like during medieval times and whatnot. Like of course there was gonna be a lot of bad shit happening throughout their history. So it just seems like a really bad road to travel down to just disband the Catholic
So
Church.
No,
I'll
no,
say
look,
to that,
I'm
I'll say to that real quick. Like, I think in the way that Prime explained it, I don't know necessarily if this is a government power disbanding it or if it's a social change within like the different churches themselves, right? If it's something more like a social change, I'm okay with like a disbanding coming through like peaceful measures, right? Where like a lot of the churches that are across the sea from the Vatican say, you know what? We're not going to abide by your fucking doctrines anymore. Fuck you. And then like you have Catholic churches across like the, America saying like, yeah, gay people come on in. We're not gonna like settle for priests and archbishops raping children. We're gonna actually condemn this shit. I think in that level of disbanding, I think that would be a benefit. If we're talking about the government getting involved, I don't think there's any way it could be beneficial because we'd see that fight. And that's why I said what I did. But Prime made it clear that's not what he's talking about.
Let's go to Chris and then Puller.
Hey, Pyro, can I wanted to
Hold
ask,
on, Chris,
is
Chris,
there
and,
a,
hold on, Chris and Puller. We got a lot of people going.
Yeah, Gilly, what I was saying was there was a time where these things we can track these things happening throughout the ages, and it continues up to the present day. I'm just saying they have like an extent, like not all religions, right, are like still like getting away with these types of things, even if they like were from like long ago, right? We have our criticisms of it, right? Especially when with America when it comes to like when it comes to a lot Islamic faiths, right? So like we criticize them, but we don't criticize the Catholic Church and its many atrocities as much at all, like if any. Even when like things do come out about the Catholic Church, like we get this big story and everybody's appalled for a little bit, even like not even everybody, right? It just gets swept back under the rug and we're just waiting for the next thing to come out.
I agree
It, it,
100%. That's why I was saying like the Catholic Church is absolute dog shit, and like Polar was saying um like I completely forgot the point I was going with there, but yeah,
all I'm
like I
asking
agree
is
with
when
you on
is
like
enough enough?
That's it.
When
Yeah.
when do we say we have to do something, right? Like you can't operate in America like you like if you want to stay around the world, like you just can't operate here. Not with the things like you've been doing, right? We have the power to say that. Like we do
I,
it all the time. How many Mormon sects of like Christianity do we just wipe out? Like did we just like go super hard on for doing way less than what the Catholics are doing? So like
did we? Well,
I
I
think
was gonna
I
push back
was.
against.
Oh, sorry,
Oh, go
Puller.
ahead.
No.
Yeah.
Puller's waiting.
So there's Chris. I want to address him earlier. He says like this is a good point. It's like how long is it gonna take until like the Catholic Church finally, I don't want to say get what they deserve, that sounds weird,
Yeah.
but we actually do things that we need to, and it is a serious question. And I think one of the difficult things is like specifically the Roman Catholic Church is like 1.3 billion members, and that's what makes it hard, right? Truth be told, public support for something can make a big difference. There's a reason why like Islamic sects can get a lot of hate in America, and the Catholic Church can be seen as something that's like so pristine. At the same time, I think I also agree with Chris on this point that like I think there's a difference in like saying, oh, this group has done X in the past, but now this group is working consistently to change that, trying to right its wrong, trying to do the things that it needs to become a better group. And when the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, hasn't even apologized for this, that's pretty bad. I mean, I would think that like just apologizing would be the bare minimum. But like for any, I think for any like this is also like a non I don't know if churches are considered nonprofit groups, but a non-taxable group to engage in these kinds of activities. I'm curious to see whether there is a double standard, and I do think there's a double standard present. If any other organization were to consistently do what the Catholic Church does, I think it would face a lot more social backlash. But at the same time, I do think that people are more invested in it, and that's the truth. Religion is very different from like a nonprofit organization that you're invested in, or such as, and it comes with its own social repercussions. But I do think that needs to change.
Okay, let's go to GSU and then Fanatic afterwards.
I go
Yeah,
next.
that's a GSU, right?
Oh no, I was saying I go after
Oh,
Fnatic.
okay, all right, then Fanatic first then.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say really quickly that I don't think that like waiting for like a top down kind of approach where like the Catholic Church starts condemning itself or like the higher ups start condemning these things that happen like very much at the local level. I don't think that's even realistic because then they'd have to condemn themselves because within that structure they had like organizations moving priests from one place to the next when they would get caught like that they were diddling boys. So those power structures actually were like supporting and encouraging and abetting these people in some of these atrocities. So that's never going to happen. And I would say I totally agree with everything that's being said so far, but I just want to make a distinction. The difference between the Catholic Church and these other organizations, the reason why I think there's so much more leniency is because to criticize the Catholic Church is to criticize a lot of the individuals that follow it, which I think is somewhat embedded in this question. And I think the idea becomes that people are a lot more forgiving and lenient when it comes to their family. And when we look at just sheer numbers of people involved like that, like are reliant on the Catholic Church, then I think those individuals would put up such a big fight if ever there was like some like outcry or backlash over what the Catholic Church is doing. So with that being said, like yes, I think they should be held accountable. Yes, I think it's absolutely atrocious what's ever happening. No, I do not agree with the Catholic Church in any capacity. But I understand why these things are so distinct, why it would be so hard to actually implement any punishment.
So we're gonna GSU. We'll go to Adam and then Pyro.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what everybody else is saying. If people distance themselves from the power structures that are perpetuating these things, I think that's a good thing, and I think that's something that we should attempt to encourage. I don't understand how far other people on this panel would attempt to take this though. I think like I said in my opening, people that do things that are wrong should end up in jail, right? I don't. I mean, I honestly don't know how to invest myself more in this than that. I'm yeah.
Oh, don't worry. I'll pull you back in when I jump in. I'll get you
I'm
fired
sure.
up.
That's what I'm waiting. I'm like, let Brian go
Yeah,
first.
We all wait for the prime position.
Oh
that's all.
boy.
Yeah.
We'll go to Adam and then we'll go to Pyro.
First, to kind of speak back to what GSU said, yeah, people who do things wrong should be like put in prison or like punished to the full extent of the law or whatever. But at the same time, I think for like any other organization, including businesses, including nonprofits, a lot of times we also hold like the organizations who create environments to allow these things to happen to be like held complicit as well, which is something that the Catholic Church does. The second thing is, I'm not sure how many people on this panel are or have been religious, but like I don't go to church anymore. But someone who used to, I think when I kind of stopped going to church, I kind of noticed that like Catholics already among like even among like Christian people are kind of like those guys over there where it's like, oh yeah, he's Catholic. They're kind of weird. We're not like with them. Like we're not Catholic. We're like non-denominational or we're like Protestant. Like Catholics are kind of weird, and I think we're already starting to see that. And I would love to see a lot more of that.
But I don't know about that because like especially even where I live, like smaller churches will go to the Catholic churches for help, like with things, right? Like sometimes we like I'd be at like a small Baptist church and like we'd go to a Catholic church from something, right? Where they were actually getting support or like just like participating in community events. They're like a lot of churches like fully congregate together or like support each other,
Yeah.
and there's still a lot of support for the
Well, yeah,
Catholic
a
Church
lot of
out
times that
now.
happens because that's like where the resources are, right? So like,
Yeah,
if you're
that's
like a dog shit little tiny Baptist church and you want to get something done, sometimes you kind of have to go to the Catholic Church to do it. And like we can probably argue that that's like maybe they shouldn't, like maybe it's gotten to a point where those smaller churches should like look elsewhere or like just work on smaller projects and not do things. But yeah, like definite like but there definitely is sort of like this growing consent to the point where like I've been to churches where there have been pastors on stage who have basically said, yeah, those Catholics are a little bit crazy, like on stage.
What
like,
does that? Can you
preaching a
explain what
sermon
that
to an
means?
audience.
I don't know what you mean by that. Like all Catholics
I
are those people.
understand.
Can
Yeah, kind of like actually Polar might explain it better. Go ahead.
So, someone who, to give some context, my mother was a Catholic. My dad was an Orthodox Christian, so I grew up in both churches. The difference is that like I think one of the things that always makes Catholics a little different is their view on a lot of social and cultural aspects of the world. So there's like this big idea. The one that always pops out to me is like Catholics are always known for not using like birth control because you're not supposed to, from my understanding. And it's a lot of those like the social like repercussions on society that really makes those pastors like not necessarily really resonate with a lot of the other like Catholic churches, as well as the fact that now I've heard people talk about how like I know some Catholics that will literally just separate themselves from other Christians. So a Baptist and a Protestant may see their faith is more alike in comparison to a Catholic and like a Baptist or a Catholic, especially a Catholic and a Protestant. At the same time, Fanatic makes a good point though too, when talking about like condemning a church, like condemning the church may make a lot of Catholics feel as if they're individually being condemned as well. And I think the important point is that you have to be able to separate those two. So it's hard, but at the same time, you can be like, well, we don't believe that the current structures of the current like higher ups in the Catholic Church, they need to be condemned. There are issues that need to be taken place. But a lot of people see those, like for example, if you're see the Pope or other religious leaders as like super important people in their lives, that play a big effect. So it's hard to do those things, but I do think it is valuable.
Just before we go to Pyro, I'm trying to pull it up, but I think the statistics. I'm on Catholics for Choice, but I think the statistic is that like 98% of Catholics use some sort of contraceptives, like the actual people. So like they ignore the Catholic Church on this. I'm looking up for the exact. I'm going to look for the exact percentage on this, and I'll send it to you.
I'll tell you this. I think nowadays, like, this is just personal experience, but all of the Catholics that are my age don't really follow that ruling. But like a lot of the older, like much more. Yeah. You ever seen like a Catholic family and they got a bunch of kids? That's why.
It says the Catholic hierarchy opposes all forms of artificial contraception. Yet, 90% of Catholics in the United States, which is also the older people, I imagine too, right? United States have used some form of contraception at some point in their lives, which is, I guess, it's a wide range at some point in their lives, to be fair. But right.
Yeah, that's a big bar.
Yeah, to be fair. But hold on, let's go to
context.
Yeah. Let's go to Pyro.
So like for me, a lot like this question is centered around the Canadian schools run by the Catholics doing the horrible shit they did with the mass graves. So like when I worry about we're talking about like, should it be disbanded and how, like a lot of this comes down, like I hear it as like, how should we get the Catholic Church to at least recognize this or something along those lines? And if we're not going to be talking legally and we're going to be talking strictly morally, I think one of the things we can do is, like I said before, like, maybe have these churches like pressure these churches socially from like within their congregations to take a stand against that type of shit, not allow, obfuscating the issues or like ignoring them when it comes to like priests abusing people, or when we find out shit like this, maybe pressuring the individual churches to take responsibility, because like the Pope or whatnot, they weren't there running the churches themselves. Canadian Catholics and shit running the churches. Maybe pressure them themselves to take responsibility if you want to like disband the church without using legal repercussions, because that can lead to a lot of problems. Like maybe socially pressuring them to do it within themselves. And I honestly, because like I could see Polar like making the faces, I don't know how we do that to a point where we're not already are, because like we hear about these things and a lot of people will condemn it, but like then like what gets done, because like the churches won't say anything.
You know what'll change it all? Listen, you know what we need?
And
we need a new batch of Instagram infographics so young teen girls can
Oh,
post
God.
them all across their stories and talk about how they really care and how they're educating their follower base and all this stuff. That's exactly what's going to solve this, okay? Because you know what? The Pope, he's scrolling on Instagram all the time and he's seeing these like young white girls from goddamn Connecticut, okay, posting on their story and talking about this, okay? That's how we solve this
Listen,
issue.
I'll agree with that. We know Pope Francis likes the angry birds in the Instagram, right? Like maybe we can influence him through social media.
Maybe the Twitter post, too.
And like
Don't
that's a
forget
like
those.
solution. Like when we're talking non-legally, I would actually support. Like maybe we can get Catholics being like, "Yo, stop this shit. Recognize the fucking children in the recognize residential schools. Recognize the fucking abuses within a church." Maybe we could get this on social media through the infographic shit. But like that's my problem. Like if we're not talking about legally, for me, it's hard to see how we can get enough moral support with it to actually make the change to like separate the Vatican from the Catholic Church within like our hemisphere and shit, to disband it at least.
I'll
So-
also say this, maybe like a more real solution would probably be that like you may want to end up working with a lot of the lower members in the Catholic Church. So I do think that if change is probably going to come, you know, it'll probably end up coming from younger individuals within the church that are like kind of like nudge like higher ups or working to change that. But even that can be somewhat difficult.
So okay, I'm getting my position. So, hey, let's have a little fun. Let's list the sins of the Catholic Church. So we'll start with everyone's favorite, protecting pedophiles, as in they did for a very long time, right? And we'll get back to that in a second. But protecting pedophile priests, assisting the Nazis. Oh, that's an oldie but goodie, right?
That happened.
The Catholic Church assisted the Nazis in identifying the Jews for extermination. A sexist structure, right? So the women can only rise so far within the Catholic Church, right? And they're dead set about that. They literally just had a meeting. It was like 2 years ago, maybe? 2 years had a meeting about, should we change this? They're like, nah, fuck that shit. No, we're still not going to do that. Cultural genocide. Now going back to the residential schools, right? So the Polar was correct when he said this is not a Canadian phenomenon. It happened in the States. It happened in Australia. It happened in New Zealand. Looked this up the other day on stream. So it happened, well, in the English fair, right? I'm curious if in other areas it happened as well. But when you're looking to commit a crime against humanity, well, who do you call? You call the Catholic Church. They'll help you out. Next, fighting against women's ability to decide what to do with their own bodies, right? So, fighting against bodily autonomy. This is what they do. This is what they're still doing, right? They're telling fucking the College of Cardinals, American College of Cardinals, right, or archbishops, maybe, excuse me, is saying that they should like excommunicate Biden because of his position on abortion. Wow, wonderful, great guys, right? And then, of course, condemning homosexuals, right? Oh, excuse me. They said they hate the sin, but not the sinner. So that's my fault for getting that wrong. I apologize, right? So yeah, these are just a few of the endless horrors that the Catholic Church has exhibited upon the rest of humanity, right? And then to address something that Gambit said, right? This is all in the past. Okay, going back to pedophile priests.
Wait. I wasn't saying wait. I was talking about what this topic is. I think that there are current things potentially that exist, and I'm not denying those existences.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
Fair
something
enough.
to say on all this
Fair
too.
enough. All right. But those priests, first of all, right? No one asked, right, when like the pedophile priest thing started. Like no one really talks about that because then you
it
have
started hundreds of years ago.
yeah. Thank you.
Maybe longer than that.
That's what I'm saying. So let me finish my point. But the point is that if you look back into the past, right? When they had less accountability and more power within governmental structures, right? Was that the point where they weren't abusing kids? When it was even more impossible to actually countermand anything the Catholic Church says, right? Like we're talking about like it's like the 40s and the 50s, right? Where people were experiencing this abuse and trying to come to authorities and being told they were fucking liars. How could they say that about a fine, upstanding Catholic priest? So you're gonna go back in time where they had more power, right? And then they weren't abusing kids there? Well, of course they were, right? So, all right, so this is a organization has been protecting pedophiles for centuries, right? As been pointed out, thank you, right? Centuries. And then we're in a situation where, remember what they did is that they moved them around, right? And where did they send some of these people? Well, they send them to like lower income countries that have less state power, right? Less state power to check the Catholic Church. So, is it still happening now? If we actually did some sort of audit of the Catholic Church in third world, I'm not supposed to say third world countries, but in lower income countries, right? If we did that, what would we find? Does anyone here, can anyone guarantee me that, oh, right now the Catholic Church has stopped all that? Right this second? In those countries? You think so? Put your life on that. So, so this organization, right? And Chris hit that nail on the head from the very beginning, right? After all of that, after all the atrocities, right? At one point do we say it's enough? At what point do you say to its followers, right, who are well aware of many of these things, right, that like you're supporting this organization that's clearly criminal, that's clearly done these criminal actions. So at what point do you have to take responsibility for that? And we say it's immoral. Now, I didn't say illegal, right? And saying, oh, yeah, take away their religious rights to worship how they want. Yeah, sure, whatever. I don't care, right? I'm saying, like, you as a person, at what point do you have responsibility to simply say no? Not to stop being a Christian. There's other denominations, right? And of course, going back to the replacement thing, like you could literally have all the structures of the all the belief systems of the Catholic Church without the structures, right? You could actually just decide, like, we'll create the neo-Catholic Church, right? Like, the same great taste, all far less bigotry, though, right? Like, you could do that. That's an option. That you could just say, like, we won't support this large organization with a history from time immemorial of atrocities, right? Oh, and then the Crusades, like, sure, that too, right? Like, just keep going back, and there's more. It just goes deeper. There's like again helping with the not just the residential schools, but even before, right? When they first came over, helping with the Native American extermination, right? Like, when does it end? When does it end? And then we just say, oh, there's some bad people have to go to jail. Oh, yes, great, right. But if there's any other organization, as has already been stated, any other organization that'd be one of these things would have disbanded it, would have destroyed that organization. It would have to be done, because how could they? That Catholic Church has done an endless series of violations and nothing. Hiram?
So I will answer like Chris's question in the crescent like you're raising here with like going into specifics, right? Like, when is enough enough? Sitting in the 21st century, if I'm looking at the history of the Catholic Church, like, and it's my religion, it's something ingrained within me since birth. Personally, I would say enough is enough. The moment I found out they sided with the Nazis in exchange for like their own fucking country. That's something I can't even believe. You know, the tenets of God. I don't really want to see other people be harmed. That's when I personally would be like, you know what? I can't even excuse the fact that like I can maybe say this is just past shit and hundreds of years ago. In the 40s, you fucking aligned with the Nazis. That's when I personally would be like, no more. Like, I can't fucking overlook this shit. But when it comes to like the bigger question of like, yeah, them being able to like take out priests and archbishops and shit who like abuse children and abuse people and shit and relocate them to other countries, I think that gets more into a problem with legality, because I want to see that stopped, right? Like, I do want to see like what Gambit said, like bad people go to jail. Unfortunately, if they just move priests around, I don't understand. Like, I don't see how we could morally get that if they're just going to move someone into literally a different country. So the question for me comes to like, how do we stop the Vatican from having that much power over the world where they can tell the United States, like, yeah, we're going to take this priest and put him in Guatemala. Like, I want to stop that specifically, because like if we could like relegate it so like the religions are kind of held to the same standards as the countries they're in, like we can begin to address that problem without having a sovereign, city state come in and say, well, no, we actually want this will done because of like religious purposes and shit. And like that's why I like tied it back to the Vatican, because like they pull a lot of these strings. Like, they provide a lot of the funding that goes into moving a lot of these priests around and covering a lot of this shit up. So I kind of want to cut that funding off and cut off a lot of that power. So like, at least in the United States, we can maybe address this on like a case by case basis and find out like, who's doing this shit. You cannot be going to another country or shit, and you will be prosecuted, because it seems like a lot of that comes from the Vatican being the head of the state.
All right, so real quick, everything that Prime said, besides the Nazi thing and besides the like pedophile thing, is all shit that like, why would the church accept that when it's literally against their religion? Again, I don't like support this. It's literally against their religion. Like, it's literally that religion for a specific reason. They have these set of rules, and that's what they want to abide by. that makes it their religion. The pedophile thing, it's like it is the whole Catholic like church like specifically responsible for taking these pedophiles out and moving them like that. Like I feel like those are like very like random things that it isn't like entirely like representative of the entire like Catholic Church. And then the Nazi thing.
Absolutely. Like you don't even have to go far to find the information, right? It's all public now. We have records, like the movie Spotlight came out. There was whole articles on this. Well, they found records of who was moving priests, where they moved them to, like at what time, who they were. Right? We have the records, and not only that, apparently the Vatican has records of tons of atrocities that have been committed that you can just like push off to them, so you can hide all the evidence, right?
Secret
Like
libraries, bro.
like if
Let's
we
not be.
raided the Vatican, what sort of horrible shit in there will we find?
We
Right?
ha-
Like
we
we
have to
have
be a
no
l-
idea.
we have to be a little bit careful with the Vatican library stuff, only because we can't go too conspiratorial. I watched a conspiracy video on this, but my understanding is that it is true. A lot of stuff, a lot of like ancient historical records are in the Vatican's library, but from my understanding, historians have to be pre-approved before going into the libraries by the Catholic Church, and that like license to view a lot of their records are like renewed every 6 months, and I think they're making them more public as time goes on. But at the same time, Prime, you're right about a lot of the atrocities that have happened and things that they've done wrong. And someone in chat said this like the sins of the church, not sins of the followers, right? When we think about this, there are a lot of regular people who follow the Catholic Church, and we make that clear. That we're not like, none of us here aren't condemning like individual Catholics. That's not the goal. It's the same way that you can condemn like the American government, without necessarily
Exactly.
like condemning like American people or something to that
That's
extent.
what I was gonna bring up.
Exactly. No,
Can I say something real quick?
hold on. I'll just to respond to that, and then we'll go straight to you, uh, fanatic. But exactly, I'm saying the Catholic, like the Catholic followers, did not do all these things, right? But I'm saying that you have moral culpability now that you are aware of these things happening, right? If I knew an individual who was, I mean, you have a moral culpability once you know these things are happening. That maybe I don't have to support this organization anymore, right? Like that, we could say that. And someone brought up that in chat that like isn't reform a possibility? Yeah, sure. I agree. First of all, you have to take responsibility for what you've done, right? And the Catholic Church is still fighting to this day, taking that money that they get from their followers, right, and fighting lawsuits against pedophile priests. That's what they're doing. They're defending them. That's happening now, 2021, right now. That's happening. And so, where's the reform? Where is it? Where's the remorse? So,
there's an interesting question. So like, let's say you are like an individual Catholic, right? And you see all this going on, like what should you do, right? Does that mean like, I don't know if it necessarily like, I don't think that like, oh well, this is my Catholic church, like this is where like I know my friends and I know the pastor really well or something to that extent, and I hopefully my pastor isn't doing like these terrible things, or priest isn't doing these terrible things to children. But for some people, like that's a big part of their lives. Like that's maybe the way that they get childcare or all those things. So what does it look like? What does that look like? That's a good question.
let's go to Fanatic.
Yeah, so I was gonna say that like there is a way that you actually can hold them accountable, and that would be by looking at the individual churches, because at least for that part we understand, like we can see, like yeah, like it's really tangible and it's like really local. Like this individual priest did that, and I think like trying to broaden it to like the Catholic Church as a whole is a problem. Although I will admit the Catholic Church has participated in it, and for the times when we can see that, where like they've like stories have come out and they've moved and whatever, like we can condemn them. But I would say that we would probably get a lot more traction, and we'd probably actually see movement if we instead focus on individual churches. Like okay, so this specific, I think they call them like diocese or whatever, like that we can get them. But like trying to get the whole church as a whole, that they're far too wealthy, they're far too powerful. There will never come a time where money isn't important, and they have way too much of it. So yeah.
Go ahead, Chris, then Pyro.
I was gonna say, like, I brought this up before. If it were any other organization, if this was our like the public school system, right? and there's a pedophile ring of like hundreds of like teachers getting passed around to different schools within the country to escape like convictions, like people would lose their minds, and we'd like try to find like quick a different like way to do schooling immediately. Like even though people's lives are wrapped up in a lot of these schools, right? Because it's like this is determining where their kids go in life, right? Like the amount of like the amount of support that goes into these football teams, like just sports teams in general, and just like the kids' education. If you found out that was happening, and there was a good chance that could happen to your kid, I don't know how. Like I don't care how much school pride you have, like you're gonna like get together a group of people who agree, or like and try to push for some change, or get out of that organization because like you're thinking of the safety of your family and friends, like not just like some grant, like like some image or some idea. Pull your funds, go somewhere else.
Let's go to
I feel
Pyro.
like it had to be insanely prominent.
Let's go to Pyro,
Yeah.
Adam, and then Gilly. If you have something you want to add, then
So I think Polar hit on this a bit earlier, and I might be mistaken, but like one of the things when we're talking about like the religion and its organization is like, how do we contest with the fact that there may be a contingency of Catholics who view like the religious structure as their way to God, right? Like I've met so many Irish Catholics living in Western New York who have told me outright, like, oh, we go to the Catholic Church because they're our voice to God. We listen to the Vatican because they're our voice to God. I know the accent is bad, but like the sentiment that like within like the Catholic religion, and maybe Polar can speak to this because he was a former Catholic and shit, but like it seems the sentiment is like that organization is kind of like how God dictate his will to like the people. And so like when we're talking morally how we separate that, I want to know how we get some people who might just see like, yeah, they said this, maybe that was the will of God at one point, and then like get them to say like, no, that's fucking wrong, right? Because like this is something the child residential schools, a lot of the sins of the Catholic Church, it becomes somewhat of that argument when people within the religion bring it up, like, well, they're the voice of God, how do we know God didn't want this to happen? And like when we're talking morally and not legally, how do we fucking overcome that? Because religion is, unfortunately, it's not like a political party where if you find out like a Republican or someone's diddling a kid, you can be like, no, fuck that, I'm going to Democrats. Like that religion is something, it's like so ingrained that like it's gonna take a lot for people to, like, fucking overcome that. So like I want to know how we get them to overcome that. Like, no, this isn't the word of God, these are just people. God didn't come down and write the doctrine, and it's okay to fucking move over and stop funding them, like several people have said before.
let's go to Adam.
Ira, you make.
Well, you got a quick,
Yeah.
do you have a quick
I was
comment,
just gonna-
and then
Yeah,
we'll go to
something
Adam.
quick, I guess. I read something earlier. I was trying to find it, but something that's pretty interesting is that the number of Catholics on, I think, like worldwide is like growing. But I think in the United States, like Catholicism is actually shrinking. I know they have like, I think it was 11 or 12% less churches than they did like 20 years ago, and they also have like 2 million less members. And I wonder if part of this is like other like I know like Protestant churches and stuff have grown a lot, and I wonder if like other more established churches coming out and like that aren't Catholic has allowed like Catholics to leave like the Catholic Church and find support in other places.
So we'll go to
I think that's-
Gilly.
I think it's because
We'll go to, okay, we'll go to Gilly, Polar, and then Chris. But on the membership issue, my understanding is that the Catholic Church is making a big push in Africa, right? Because religiosity is going down everywhere else, people catching sense.
Oh, sure.
But like they're making a big push in Africa. That's my understanding of the situation. So that's why their membership would be going up, if I would guess. Go ahead, Gilly, Polar, and then.
I think the reason a lot of people are leaving the Catholic Church is because people are generally becoming more progressive, and like the Catholic Church is like insanely like traditional. Like they have like insanely traditional values, and that's why I think earlier you were saying like people kind of look at Catholics like, oh, they're kind of the weird ones, and it's because they go over the top with their like traditional values, like they're extreme almost. But as to what Chris was saying, like how if we have an organization and like one like or two pedophiles or something got caught in the organization, they would like shut it down. That's absolutely not true. It would have to be like insanely prominent within the organization for for it to get shut down, and I don't think like I honestly don't believe it's like that prominent within like the Catholic Church. Like,
Did you miss the whole? Did you miss the news on it? Like it wasn't like 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or even 100. It was hundreds of priests. It was like giant logs of books of information of people who are still alive who just got moved over to like what Brian said, like low income countries, right? To like just escape completely their prosecution and probably end up doing much worse harm in those places now than they ever could here. Like
so you're
like
telling me there's like lobbies of like pedophile priests just getting like moved around?
yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes, we're all
literally
saying
fucking
that.
yes.
Yes.
You look at South America, you look at countries in Africa. These are the low income countries that we're talking about that they get moved to because guess what? The legal systems aren't as stringent as they are in like, what some people would call more advanced countries, right? Like those countries, they could get away with that shit better, so they move them down there. Like that's what they do. And they've been
Yeah.
doing it like Chris Como said for like
Yeah.
ever.
Like I'm not dying on this hill because I'm like not Catholic, or I don't like agree with any of the like Catholic religion. It's hard to believe as a normie who's just like seeing like my entire family is Catholic, and just seeing it from like this side to believe that like there's hundreds and hundreds of like pedophiles within like the Catholic Church that are just getting like moved all around.
You know what? How
Wait,
old are you
it doesn't have to be.
actually?
Wait, no. But it's fine. No. Let's not go down this rabbit hole. It's really simple. It doesn't have to be hundreds. Even if it's 20, even if it's 30, even if it's 5. If this is something that has happened and they've abused this many children, and there are, even if they're not going to say there's hundreds and hundreds of pedophiles, there are hundreds and hundreds of victims, right? So
Yeah.
that's enough. That's enough. We don't have
That's a
to
good
prove
point.
anything beyond that. And
Yeah, and they should all be
information is
prosecuted
critical.
100%.
The problem is,
They should all
but
be
then
prosecuted.
even
Like no one's
even to get onto that point, like I think it's a problem for that to happen. But then to like ship them off to different countries is another form of to like avoid extradition or do other things. That's pretty bad. Also, Pyro does bring up a really good point. I actually like so somewhat like when a lot of Catholics do look at the Catholic Church as their connection to God. It was a big difference in like the existence of like Martin Luther talks about this a lot. And so for example, a remnant of this is confession, right? Like you confess to your priest, right? That's a big deal. Or at one point it's very very heavily invested. There's a reason why God directly speaks to the Pope, right? Like that's the idea. So there is like a very strong connection between the church as a way to connecting to God. It's a big difference between like Protestants and Catholics. So you're very right on that, Pyro. And also like the Prime brought this up, but the religious decline in America, maybe I think I don't know if a lot of those people are necessarily going to other denominations. I know a lot of people are just becoming non-religious. I think it's increasing every single year. At one point, I think it's like at 30% right now, and it's only like increasing. So
Yeah, I wanted to say,
30%
Gilly,
what?
I think non-religious that
Oh,
includes
okay. Gotcha.
something like that. I don't know the exacts, but
So
something like
it's
that.
Chris's turn, then we go. Yeah.
yeah, I was just saying to Gilly, depending on how old you are, you might have like that news might have just escaped you, right? Like that happened. I don't think that was like the early 2000s when that broke, right? And it was all over the news and all like magazines of like how many the whole underbelly of the Catholic Church like preach situation. I think it started there, and like over the years, like more information started to come out, and that's eventually why they made the whole Spotlight movie. Like it was happening for this drop of all this information was happening for a good chunk of time, and like we got all this information. It was appalling. Everybody was sickened by it, but nobody did a damn thing. Like at least even if they tried to do something, they couldn't, right? They any evidence, like the Vatican can just lock away, right? We know this now because with the Reformation schools, like they said specifically that information went to the Vatican, and we can't get our hands on it. They can do that with anything. Like we know
Who's
these
like
things plain out
specifically
in the day.
moving these people around? Is it like the Vatican themselves like
Other
intervening
bishops,
and
yes, other bishops, other like priests, like we like the people in charge, even all the way up to the Pope at some points, like of like people being moved around. They like there's logs of it, like and like what they tried to do was hide, like in the reasoning why they were moved, right? But like you can trace it all back to like because of victims, you can trace all these priests like back to this abuse, and like you can see in their logs where they sent them to. Yeah, they try to cover it up in the writings of like this priest had to just move there because like they got sick or had family or they just retired there. But no, like we call them with their pants down. Like all that information's out there. Like it
It's a
and
bad pun.
again, yeah,
So,
I'm sorry. Like and
so
the
like,
worst is like we have like it's just like this history you can date it back for so long in the Catholic Church. This is a thing that they do. They've been doing this record of priests, like horrible priests, who've like done terrible things, who said terrible things, even about like the rape of children. So like it like and like Prime didn't even bring up everything it could. I mean, like the Catholic run mental institutions that had to be shut down because they were fucking terrible. Like there's tons of things that they did like that they had their hands in even till this day that they have their hands in that we can't even fathom. I think we should just erase them off the board. We have to do something like
Yeah, I agree with
So-
like that they're a horrible institution. I just like don't really disagree with like the whole disbanding thing and like trying to get them to disband within themselves when literally they're like very tied to their religion, like like getting baptized and doing like everything that they feel like makes them like accepted by God. It's just like it's a very interesting
So,
question to be
plenty of
honest.
That's
denominations do
why that's why I asked the question. Like, if we're not going to like push it into more of a legal action, we can morally condemn them all they want. That does not morally condemn the money out of the Vatican's wallet, right? Like, they have thrones and castles made of gold. Like, so how do we stop these occurrences from happening? Because that's what I want to do. And like, if we can do it morally, I'm all for it, but it doesn't seem like to me that we can. It just seems like it'll continue while we hem and haw about it.
Stop donating. Stop donating. There was a dip multiple times. There was I was reading an article really recently talking about like how within the Vatican they had to cut down on like the salaries of I believe it was the cardinals and like their staff within the Vatican itself because donations had fallen because of the pandemic, right? Like what they call, they're not called donations, they're called something else. I'm sorry.
tides.
Tides and
Ties,
shit.
yeah, ties, yeah,
Fine.
yeah. Because
So, like,
they had fallen during the pandemic, right? It actually had a tangible effect on what the Catholic Church doesn't have infinite money. They don't, and they can't print
So,
their own money. So
Thank you so much, Prime, because like that's a solution I'd actually
Well,
get
they
behind,
do
right?
as long as they do as long as like the members have access
No,
to a job.
I know,
right?
I know, but and this is the first part of the question, right? Like, is it like at what point are you morally responsible, for continuing to support an organization like this that has so many atrocities, right? Like, yes, you're absolutely right. If the members don't stop giving, then Catholic Church will survive for centuries more, right? And come up with all kinds of other things to inflict on humanity, right? But
Brian,
but I'm saying that do we have enough evidence? Is there possible for a culture shift? Even in fucking
Yes.
Ireland, right? Like deep Catholic territory. There are people who rethought, right? Because they dealt with it personally, right? The abuses of the Catholic Church. They rethought their membership, right? There's a massive shift happening, right? But not enough. I'll clearly take it down. But there's an opportunity here. At what point do we say to people who are left, "What are you doing supporting this organization?" Let's go to Adam first. If you have something to say to me at GSU, we'll say.
yeah.
I guess like I don't know. I have a guy who keeps like posting stats in my chat. So something that's interesting is like apparently half of the people who were in the Catholic Church, out of the people who left, half go to like become atheists and half go to other churches. So I think it's like very reasonable to like maybe like I think this is like how religion kind of works. Is like when you have a church, when that church starts supporting things you don't believe in, that like you find another church, and sometimes that makes you like switch denominations. That's actually how like a lot of different denominations of like Christianity came up, was because like there's a split in the church over big issues. And like I think like the Catholic Church has had enough big issues that like we should start like pushing people necessarily. And like how you do this is like a really hard question, but like pushing people to leave the Catholic Church is like a big thing. Like, hey, like I understand that you're Catholic and something, but maybe you should like start a church that's not Catholic and doesn't do all the bad shit. Or maybe you should go to that church over there. Or I guess if you're atheist, maybe you should join the atheist side. Yeah, like we can like provide other options. The idea that like these Catholic people are like so like while religion is really important in their lives, the idea that they're so ingrained in like their Catholic ideals that they're not gonna like leave a church over like if their kid got raped, they wouldn't leave the church is like ridiculous.
Okay, let's go
But
to
nobody's
GSU and then
making
Pyro. Go ahead, GSU.
Yeah, nobody's making that claim. I think one of the things that happen is the people who belong to a church feel like their church is good and they see some of these problems as problems for other churches. Like, and maybe they are connected at some hierarchical level, but they see themselves as my church is good, right? So, like y'all are saying, I think we can try to like socialize people out of their positions, but I don't know if that's really realistic. It's like we all see the problems in America, and we can point to Americans importing Nazis, and we can point to all of the different atrocities in America, but we're still gonna be here and be citizens and work to try and reform America from within. And I think that a lot of those people who belong to that faith, they probably see themselves in the same light as I don't think this thing should be abolished. I think that the bad acts that are happening should no longer happen. So I'm going to work to do my part to reform it. And I think that's the mentality probably of most of the people that still use that faith. And I think to assign like immorality to them, that's just a big much, right? That's like we're immoral for continuing this American tradition despite all of the atrocities that happen, right? So like I don't think it's fair to just
Wait.
blanketly
It's
consider
completely different to like say, yo, like I understand churches are like really big part of people's lives. I know I was like super religious like 5 years ago, but like
far more
like
than a
it's
big part of
way
people's
different
lives.
telling people to like leave their church than is telling
I'm
like
not saying that they're not
300
different.
million people to get up and leave your country. Like, these
I'm
are
not
on
saying
like
that.
totally
Wait,
different levels.
I'm not saying I never made the claim that they're on the same level at all. I'm saying that they're like within the same like prescription though. Like they're different levels for sure, but people can feel so strongly about their religion that it eclipses whatever bar where the 5 hit take of just get up
It-
and leave is not enough.
So like this hits into my point, Gamut, and like I asked this question and like pollers agreed with me that it's a problem, but no one really answered it. How do we deal with the people who will just
I
look
don't
over a lot of these issues because
but
it's their
don't call it
religion?
look over though. Maybe they think
No,
that
no, I will call it look over, and then like, because like Top Dolphin made a point that I'll respond to, right? Like some people, like if your child gets molested by a priest, you said that like they're not willing to let take that taken down, and they won't ignore that. A lot of people will, and like we do see that, like especially with the Catholic Church, that people will let their children get raped, and they will know about it, and the same thing that happens within family units, they will say shut the fuck up because whatever reason. With religion, it's because like that, this is a church of God and whatnot. You did like, and they'll come up with some reason why. With families, it's like we don't want to see Uncle Joe get arrested. This does happen, and so that's why I want to tackle these people who will actually look at these issues, understand them, and then for whatever reason say, you know what, the church is our line to God. We can't understand the word of God, therefore we're not going to change our behavior, because a lot of people will take that stance. They will look at the Catholic Church aligning with the Nazis and they will say the line, right? Like, who am I to divine God's plan? Right? He's speaking through the Pope. Who am I to contradict that? And that's what I want to try and address, because we can talk about the people who will look at these issues and they will take their money, somewhere else. I don't think these are the people that are having the problem. I think it's the people who are still like arguing with like, well, is it the word of God or is it something else? Like, how do we convince those people who are on the fence that no, this isn't the word of God? They aren't talking, the Pope isn't talking to God when, they ordain these or they cover these things up. This is an actual issue that you can actually, hold some moral judgment on and take your money somewhere else. Go practice your religion somewhere else. Because for a lot of people, it is like that, where it's like, I would, but if I leave my Catholic church, I'm being condemned to fire and brimstone. And when you have that deep religious view and it's tied to your morality, it's really hard for some people to actually make that decision. And
I
we
don't know,
can't ignore
maybe
that.
maybe my lived experience just doesn't match up with reality, but like I said, as someone who goes to churches, like people leave churches all the time for the dumbest shit. Like, oh
True.
my god, that
So
lady
true.
wore pants. We're going to a different church. Oh my god, they sang too long this morning. Like, we're going to a different church. Like, not necessarily saying that they change like denominations, like not saying that they jump, but like people leave churches all the time for like the dumbest of shit. So that like, maybe I'm wrong, but like the idea that like
Mama,
someone's like kid gets like treated in like sexually abused by like a priest, and then like that family says, oh well, the priest was just doing a bad thing, but we're gonna stay here, is like unfathomable to me.
It
But
happens
like
No,
a
no, no,
lot.
no,
It
no.
happens a
Happens,
lot.
that happens
Yeah, that's
all of the
Wait.
time. Not only does that happen all of the time, but like when we're talking about the Catholic Church, right? You can move to a different Catholic church, but if you're providing tithes and shit, you're still benefiting the organization as a whole. That money still goes to like the fund where they can actually remove that priest if he does get caught and you left the church. He gets caught for another reason. You going to a Catholic church and giving your money to them, it will still go to the same fund where they can say, oh, Pastor Archbishop Freddie got caught. We're going to move him somewhere else. Like, how do we convince people that maybe it's not like the individual churches, but the organization itself where you give your money to, right? Like, you can
Yeah.
move churches.
I'll also add on to Pyro's point here as well, is that like a church, especially Catholic churches, I can go through my experience, but like your Catholic church had your Sunday school, they got you breakfast. Like I remember knowing my priest like very closely. This is like a person that was like very ordained in my family for a lot of Catholics. So that same thing can exactly happen because that's a big social setup. They take care of your kids. You may end up going to school there. It's a very like there's a reason why conservatives will always talk about how we shouldn't have welfare. We should just go back to the church system where you got a lot of support from your church. That's a big talking point. That's something that, like, before the federal government actually played a large role in people's lives, churches were like a very, very big part in the daily lives of a lot of people in this country. So I can completely understand and not under, sorry, I can completely see people doing this because this is like a second family to them. This is
Okay.
where they've spent hundreds of hours and such as. But like, yeah, I don't, and also I'll add on to the point, people do leave churches for crazy, for the wildest of reasons. I remember I left my church one time because it was just way too damn long. I do not like to sit through a 6 hour mass.
Oh,
Okay. I like an
yes.
hour mass, an hour in, I
Yes.
get my donuts, I get my breakfast, and I'm home.
Holy
That's
shit!
true.
Yes, holy fuck! That you're speaking so much truth. Holy crap!
So fast.
It PTSD just then. All right, let's go to
The hour-long chorus.
Oh,
Like, no, thank you.
Fuck me.
I can only sing the same 3 songs
Listen.
so many times.
You have to have Jesus actually living in your heart to be able to appreciate the nuance of what that moment means when you feel the Spirit and He's speaking to you and you're communing with God. It's so glorious that can last for eternity. In fact,
Listen,
it
like
will.
what's the song say? Our God is a glorious God, He is,
Hey,
and then it
you know what?
repeats the line so much.
and we can.
Fanatic may be right, okay? You're the joy and the satisfaction may last for eternity, but my legs cannot stand up for that long.
Holy shit!
I
Yeah.
I can't clap
got
for a
dinner
half
on the
an
oven.
hour.
What are
I'm
you trying to
sorry.
put
That's
my
such
house down?
bullshit. Let's go to law.
Oh, I was gonna make a lot of the same points that Polar's made. Talking to Dolphin. Yeah, people leave churches for very small reasons a lot of the time, but in very many cases, it's like those pastors, those priests are very much like your it's like relating it to like a familial unit, like some people times like that uncle that you just don't hang out with after, like by yourself. They're a lot of time it's like a dangerous individual who they might just acknowledge in one manner, but they won't condemn them. They'll still go. Or if a child comes and says, "Okay, well this such and such happened to me," they'll say, "You're lying. Why would this man of God, this man of faith, do this to you?" And it would take an extreme amount of like them seeing it before their eyes to actually leave their church. But there's both ways. Like I've definitely seen people who are like, I don't like the dress code of this church, I'm not going. But it comes in a wide spectrum and a wide variety, and that's just got to be like realized.